Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and one of the bigger decisions a freight broker will ever make is deciding to become a freight agent. The next biggest decision they'll make? Deciding what company to be an agent for. Now, longtime listeners of this pod know that SPI Logistics has been our day one sponsor and continues to do so. But instead of our regular feature interviews, I wanted to pull all the conversations with the SPI leadership team and bring them together in one episode covering everything a potential freight agent should or wants to know about a company they could potentially be a part of. Think accounts payable, IT, marketing, fraud support. If you're thinking about it, you'll find that topic covered by the SPI leadership team and how they think about supporting you as an agent in your journey. So if you're interested in becoming a freight agent or joining a freight agent program, even if it's not SPI, which I'm going to say you probably should consider them, but there are plenty of questions and topics covered in this episode that you will still find valuable. The first up, we're going to start with Mike Mikulik. He is the VP of Marketing and Sales to talk about how to succeed as a freight agent in 2024 and beyond. And we got a really great guest for you today because he's from SPI Logistics, and that's Mike Mikulik. He is the VP of Marketing and Sales over at SPI. So we are going to be talking about what makes for a successful freight agent in 2024 and beyond. We all know the market conditions are a little rough right now, but there are some bright spots. So let's sort of kick things off with one of the central discussions that we had last year. At this time last year, we were talking about what makes for a successful freight agent. And that video now on your YouTube channel sits at around 8.4 thousand views. So it's pretty safe to say that people really like the conversation we had last year. So Mike, welcome back to the show, and let's kick off this conversation for this year.
Yes, thanks for having me back. I'm glad to hear that we had good success for the last show and that people are actually interested in what we talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the success with this sponsorship, this relationship between me and you and SPI is that, we come at these conversations with a genuine curiosity and then genuine wanting to help. So that's my sort of initial sales pitch. So hopefully, folks continue to listen in. I promise it's not going to be too salesy. It will be one of those situations where we're going to cover a lot of the common questions that people are asking about becoming a freight agent, because I'm of the opinion that the traditional freight brokerage model that we've all known for the past 15 to 20 years is evolving into an agent first model. Now, I know other people will probably disagree with me when it comes to that statement, but how accurate do you think that statement is? I mean, obviously we're biased here, but it's one of those things where there is a legitimate movement from people who are working inside of a brokerage who want to do their own thing, who want to take their customers with them and build a book of business on their own.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of people that have an existing book of business, have the relations with their customers, who would like to go out on their own and start it on their own. They control their own destiny. So I think there is definitely a movement towards it. I think there's sometimes the fear factor of people going out on their own and starting their own brokerage, and really at the end of the day, it's going to be what you kill is what you eat. So if you're not, you may starve for the first few weeks or the first few months as you start bringing your customers over. So there's that fear factor that people are thinking about. But I also think a lot of actual freight broker companies, so to speak, who have an employee-based model are very interested in the agency model. And we get asked quite a bit, like, how do you guys do it? How can we make this agency model work? And there's definitely potential with it. The challenge is when you have an employee-based model where you have your own in-house, salespeople, your own dispatchers, and you have your own books of business with the customer, and then all of a sudden you bring on freight agents that have their own customers. They sometimes view themselves as competing against each other, so those challenges. But I think people in general are interested in the agency model just because there's less overhead that you have to put in place in order to have people on board. Basically, you have no costs associated with it. You're only paying them for what they bring to the table. So if they're bringing business, everyone's winning. But if they're not bringing business, well, you don't have extra costs as a company associated to that agency.
which I would imagine is very, very, I guess, enticing for an existing freight brokerage that's looking to. Everybody wants more customers, so that's probably the easiest route for them to take is to just bring on additional agents to increase their margins. But then, to your point, and to a lot of points that I see, especially on the freight broker subreddit, which we'll get into some of those questions later on. But a lot of the comments around there within that subreddit is that, oh, well, if you go work as a freight agent and you go to another brokerage, then those customers are going to be called on by the in-house brokers. And so it's almost like you're competing with yourself.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's a big question that gets asked of us when anyone is looking to come on board as a freight agent with SPI is who owns the accounts? Are they my accounts? Are they your accounts? Are they shared accounts? Here's the thing. The freight agent model that we have in place, the agent that comes on board has his existing book of business. He has his customers. He has his relationships. They're his accounts. I don't make him sign a non-compete where I have control of his accounts. If he decides to leave, he can take his accounts with him. So that is one thing that is usually one of the first questions is, do I have a non-compete and who owns my accounts? And you know what? It puts a lot more pressure on the agency company. I mean, for instance, our company, with that type of model that the agent could leave at any time and take his accounts and go somewhere else, it puts the onus on the agency company to ensure that they have a strong stickiness factor. And that's a word Joe always uses. He goes, we need to ensure that we have a good stickiness factor with our agents so that they don't want to leave. So that means giving them support when it comes to sales support, helping them try to, grow their business, working with them to find areas that they can enhance their business so they can streamline it to be more effective and productive. Giving them the best TMS system that you can give or that you can offer out there, giving them all these various tools that it makes them hard to leave because you know what, they're getting everything they need to be successful and we're all winning together. And I'm telling you, when we sell with our agents and we help them get a new piece of business or they're able to deep sell an existing piece of business, like the mental factor of how good you feel is just awesome on both sides. It's a partnership. And I find we've had good success with that because we've invested heavily working with our agents to help them grow and streamline their business.
Now,
I took a few different topics there, didn't I?
No, I mean, you definitely like knocked off a few of my questions that I had later on, which is all about efficiency. So that's the world we live in. So I've heard you talk about, different models before, and I'm curious if just, if there's any additional ones. So you have the in-house brokers with freight agents model. Then you have, just the straight up freight agent model where you don't have any in-house brokers. Is there any other model to complement that or in addition to that sort of works out? Maybe sub agents, is that, a
Yeah.
regular thing too?
Sub agents are an aspect too. Like a lot of our agents, our larger agents will have sub agents where they'll bring on someone else who has a smaller book of business and they'll run under their agency and they'll work out a commission structure that's going to work for them too. So there's definitely options with that. I guess I see a lot of our larger agents have gone down that road where they bring on sub agents that work within the team and they kind of, they share the account or they'll each have different modes which they'll focus on within that account. It varies, but that's a model definitely. And then you'll see some other companies, not ours because we're non-asset based, but asset based companies, carriers who will employ freight agents as well too with books of business to either broker out their customers or sell it based on with the assets that company is offering as well too. So there's all kinds of different models that are out there.
Different ways you can skin a cat. And as you were talking, I just remembered that we had Tynan on the show, one of your
Yeah.
agents, and he's actually a sub agent for a larger agent, and that was how he got his foot in the door at a very young age, and now he's doing very well as a sub agent and has sort of that pathway to get his own customers where it might be challenging for a lot of folks, especially in this market, to just start off being an agent. Maybe you never go to a freight brokerage, or maybe you leave a freight brokerage in hopes that you can become an agent, and you got to try to build that book of business in this market. Maybe in special circumstances, from what I understand, is where the sub agent model makes a lot of sense for them.
It does. It does. I mean, Tynan's, what an example that was, bringing somebody on just finishing school, was interested in transportation logistics, connected with one of our agents, worked with her on helping her grow her business and manage her business because it was a lot to handle. And at the same time, he's learned the business as well too. And he's slowly been able to get some of his own accounts that he's been able to pursue and work on. It's been good. It all boils down to the people that become agents having that right mindset. It's not for everybody. I mean, people think, I drive a truck, or I have, I've driven truck. I understand, a lot of the customers that I'm delivering to. It's a mindset. Like, you need to have that entrepreneurial spirit. You have to be driven. You have to be hungry. You have to be relentless. It gets tough. Like, it's not easy. It's not easy. And you know what? Some people just, they give up too soon as well too. But if you push through it, it's a numbers game. You know what? You get one account, and then from there you get another account. You get another account, but it takes time. You can do well at it.
Are you in freight sales with a book of business looking for a new home? Or perhaps you're a freight agent in need of a better partnership? These are the kinds of conversations we're exploring in our podcast interview series called The Freight Agent Trenches, sponsored by SPI Logistics. Now, I can tell you all day that SPI is one of the most successful logistics firms in North America who helps their agents with back office operations such as admin, finance, IT, and sales, but I would much rather you hear it directly from SPI's freight agents themselves. And what better way to do that than by listening to the experienced freight agents tell their stories behind the how and the why they joined SPI. Hit the freight agent link in our show notes to listen to these conversations, or if you're ready to make the jump, visit spi3pl.com. And what are some of those challenges that you've seen for freight agents that they've taken that risk and then they fall into a situation where maybe, it's tough to see a way out?
I think they give up too soon. They figure that, I'm going to work really hard at this for a month, 2 months, and then I'm going to start seeing some income that's going to come in right away. And the reality is it can take longer than that. It can take 3 months. It can take 4 months. And a lot of the ones that I've seen that have come in and trying to, who legitimately want to build a book of business and be an agent, give up too soon. They were like that month or that 2 months away from actually hitting it big. And I've seen numerous examples of it too. So the thing is, it's like starting your own, if you want to start your business as a roofer, well, first of all, you got to go buy a truck. You got to buy ladders. You got to buy product. You got to take care of your marketing your product. You got to do some sales. You got to do quotes. It all takes time. Like, no one just from day one starts making money on day one. It takes time, but then you have all those costs that are associated with it. As a freight agent, you basically come in with a cell phone and a computer. And you know what? You're betting on yourself to make it happen. And it takes a little bit of time, but you know what? Give yourself that 3-4 months to get things going, because the reality is that's what it's going to take.
So what does that process look like, especially when it comes to, the agents that SPI is looking for? You're looking for somebody with a little bit more experience, but maybe let's start from the beginning. What is that pathway to ultimately becoming maybe an agent for SPI? What does that pathway look like? Is it going to work at a freight brokerage, sort of earning your chops there and then building your book of business and then becoming a freight agent and then making sure that you have all of those little details worked out and then joining SPI? Or is there, another, sort of pathway in between? What does that look like?
Typically, the agents we bring on board have an existing book of business. So they've, either are a salaried broker somewhere else that has relationships with customers, that has no non-compete, and they want to go out on their own. And they're usually behind the scenes. They're working a lot with their customer to say, listen, I'm thinking of leaving. This is where I'm thinking of going. Will you support and follow me? And in most cases, because the salesperson or the freight broker has such a good relationship with the customer, they'll follow them, right? The loyalty is to the salesperson, is to the person who's been handling their day-to-day operations. And from there, they come on, and usually it's about a week window for the transition, and they come with an existing book and start running with it from there. And then from there, it just takes off and grows. Sometimes, so I basically bring on agents that have at least $1 million in revenue book of business and up. Those are the ones where, what I kind of look at. But at the same time, too, there's a lot of really good candidates out there who are phenomenal salespeople who have an existing book of business and they're looking to go out on their own. They came from a salaried and commission role and they want to go out on their own. I'll take a chance on some of these guys, even if they don't have an existing book that they can bring on, but they're going to work at it for a few months. But I'm really selective on, it's that mindset. Like, are they hunters? Are they resilient? Because it like I said, a lot of times it takes a little bit more work than what they think. But if they have that It's those soft skills. You can't be trained for it. It's either you're passionate about something, you're hungry, you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you're driven, you're a good communicator and a good listener, and you want to be mentored. Those are the guys or girls who seem to have the most success in this business.
And so, when you're thinking of making this jump, what should what should be those first few questions that you think about asking? You mentioned non-compete. I imagine pay, commission splits is probably up there. Is there anything else of what somebody should be considering if they're thinking of making that leap?
100%. I even think even more so now, just given the challenging market conditions we're facing right now with fraud and with credit. There's many questions you should ask. I mean, first of all, I'd ask about the non-compete. Who owns the accounts? Are they my accounts, your accounts, shared accounts? What is that? And you know what? If you're doing all the work and you're the agent, those accounts should be your accounts. So make sure you're not signing something where someone has control of your accounts, because in my mind, that's just not fair. The other thing that they should be looking for, I mean, this is usually the first question because everybody wants to know what they're getting paid, is what's the commission split? And on those ones, be specific on how the commission split works. Is if it starts off on the lower side, how do I wrap myself up to the higher side? What are the parameters around that? Because you want to ensure that you're comparing apples to apples on the commission splits. The next thing, and this is one thing we've been finding that a lot of potential agents are actually asking, just given the challenges of the market with companies going out of business, is they're asking for credit information about the company. And it was interesting. It's actually one of them, we sent them our credit report just so we had an idea of who we are as a company. But I was impressed that he took the time to be like, okay, what kind of, if I'm partnering up with you, I want to ensure that you guys are a stable company, that you have financial resources in place, and that you guys are financially healthy. And to be honest with you, I think it's a really good question to be asking now. Finding out how long they've been in business. What's their revenue? What's their profit? Over the last 3 years, what has been your growth scale? Like, how are you guys doing now in a down market? Asking those questions, I think, is important. The last thing you want to do, because taking your agency from one place to another, it's a lot of work. Like it's work. You're going to all your customers, you're resetting them up again. It's a big commitment. And you would hate to go and make your move from one agency to another agency, and the next thing the company's got financial challenges, and you know what, they're no longer around, right?
Gosh,
So that's a big
yeah,
question.
that's a really good question that agent asked you, because they're, with all the reports that we sort of see about, sort of trucking companies that go out of business, it's also affecting, this down market that we're in. It's also affecting brokerages as well, where, there's almost a need in the market for more brokerages and more trucking companies to close in order to help the rest of the market get back to, quote unquote, normal. And so that is actually a really smart question that I wouldn't have even thought of asking. So kudos to that agent for even, thinking of that.
I thought it was great. And obviously, I was the first time I've ever been asked that question just in that direct form, but I was impressed that obviously he's doing his due diligence. And I think everyone should do their due diligence about the company they're going to work for. I mean, the other thing I'd be asking, and this is another big thing that I find we get agents from smaller companies come into ours, is about technology. And the big thing they're asking is, what kind of TMS system are you using? What kind of connections are available with your TMS system? How old is your TMS system? What enhancements can you provide to me that I'm not getting right now? That's another huge question to ask. And I think technology has been so much on the forefront over the last 5 years. If companies are behind in technology, I think they're lagging in actually getting real solid agents. So I'm proud of the technology that we actually have, what who we've partnered with in our TMS system. I have no problem going head to head against anybody in the market with our TMS system. I think we've invested heavily into it, and we have one of the most robust systems that are actually out there. So I'm proud of it. I'm so proud of it. And even when I'm in the conversation stage with agents, I'll be like, hey, listen, I'll set you up with a demo. Take a look at our system, judge for yourself. And 9 times out of 10, the first comment back is like, wow, he goes, I've never seen anything like this, or this is exactly what I'm looking for. And I think part of it is too, is that when we have our client care do the demo with them, they're actually asking the potential agent a lot of questions about the type of business, and they're showing them things directly related to what would be important to them. And I think that's important. So I'm proud of the TMS system that we have. So, and that's a question you should be asking any potential agency that you're going to look at to work for.
What
What
about
else can I
on
say?
sort of,
The other thing I would be asking, you want to still talk about that, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask a follow-up question, but please go ahead.
Okay, now I lost my train of thought. Oh, the other question I think that should be asked while we're on technology is carrier vetting. I mean, right now with fraud and double brokering, it's a hot mess out there. And you know what? I think if companies right now have not invested into the proper technology when it comes to carrier vetting to avoid fraud and double brokering, they're putting themselves at risk. And you know what? Fraud can add up pretty quick. I mean, you have enough claims against you, or lost loads or stolen loads. I mean, you have that aspect where it could sink a company pretty quick. So that's the big thing right now, is asking about the technology they're using for carrier vetting. And we made a switch a year. Actually, how long have we been on highway now for? 6 months. Yeah, about 6 months. But we talked to Highway back when they were first promoting their product on carrier vetting, and it was the right tool for us to use. And yeah, there was little hiccups along the way as we got things going, but I'm telling you, that process has saved us so much headache when it comes to double brokering and the risks of fraud, and being able, because these guys are constantly looking for different ways to circumvent, the system and to try to screw out a broker. But I'm telling you, Highway's done a phenomenal job with trying to route out all that. So I feel very protected. And I think any agent that's looking at a particular agency should be asking what tools they have in place, what technology they're using for carrier vetting.
And with all of these tools, that you mentioned, the TMS, you mentioned Highway, I'm sure a variety of other different software applications that a freight agent can use. Are these freight agents bringing their own tech stacks, or are they able to take advantage of maybe a combination of what SPI offers and their own tech stack?
You know what? I mean, 99% of the time they have no tech stack at all, existing agents, and they're looking to come on board to a company that has the tech stack that they need to be able to carry out their business. In some cases, some agents have some specific technology tools, more so surrounded by, around their prospecting tools or the CRM that they're using to prospects. Those kind of tools they're using, and we look for ways to help, manage those within to our network as well for them. Sometimes agents are working with really large customers where, it's all on a platform where all their loads are posted, and they may have some technology for scraping the kind of loads they want to work on. We've been able to try to work with them and integrate that, so it makes it easier for them to do it within our system. But 99% of the time, they're looking to come to a company that has the tech stack that they want. And really, as an agent, you know what, you're working on a commission split. Why are you interested in an agency model? You don't want to pay for your technology yourself. You don't want to pay for your MC number. You don't want to pay for all your insurance certificates. Like, you want to go with a company that has all those things, so you're protected. You can basically do what you do best, which is bring your existing book of business on, sell, deep sell, dispatch cargo, and find carriers. So by us taking all those other tools away from them, it gives them more time to focus on those revenue generating activities.
And so I would imagine that those additional tools are those part of maybe the commission fee that they have to pay out, as far as their commission splits. Are there extra costs for this extra technology, or is it all included with being an agent at SPI?
It's all included with being an agent with SPI. We work on a commission split, so obviously we're taking a portion of the commission, but in return, what are they getting? They're getting back office support from our client care team. They're getting, they're not having to worry about bad debt if their customer doesn't pay. I take on all that financial risk. So if our agent's customer doesn't pay or goes belly up for that matter, I don't go back to my agent and go, well, your customer went out of business. You owe us or you owe us this back. No, we take on that financial risk. So that commissions fee, which is a smaller fee compared to what the agent gets by quite a bit, it protects them. It gives them all those tools so that they can do what's best. And a lot of people, actually, this is an interesting story. Actually, you did interview Brad Clark at one time, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes, he was my first SPI interview, actually.
Okay, I thought I was your first SPI interview. I probably
he was the first freight agent. He was the first freight agent.
But he ran a 3PL company as well too. And he found it was so hard for him to build his business because he was so focused on back office support functions, receivables, payables, dealing with whatever other challenges come up, that he found by outsourcing that to SPI, he was able to spend more time on revenue generating activities, and his business actually grew just based on that model. So I do think that for a lot of 3PLs that are smaller in nature, that are looking to expand in technology, well, technology is expensive, or they're looking to scale up their business, but it's cash flow they need in order to scale up their business with a lot of large customers. there's a value in them, even them joining an agency, and they still can hold tight on, they built a company name, for instance. They can still use their name, no problem. They can still use their email address. We just become their back office support function as SPI. But yeah, there's ways to work around that too. But I've seen a lot of success with smaller 3PLs who finance themselves, want to grow, just didn't have the time, didn't have the support, or even hiring a back office team costs money, that they found value in just relinquishing that and just becoming an agent and focusing on revenue generating activities and
I feel
make
like
more money.
you've already sold me, not just saying this, but I feel like no, not that I'm actually going to go do this, but it does sound enticing to go out there and have all of the risks and the questions and have that part of it answered, and then you can just focus on what you're really good at. The next question I sort of had around was around like taxes, CPA, because you're when you're an agent, it's your own business, and so you have to worry about those additional, I guess, structures, because you're essentially an independent contractor. So is there any like sort of assistance in that regard when it comes to sort of the admin side of running a business, or is that really should be up to the agent to handle?
I think in the States, where they run off a 1099.
Yeah, 1099.
The same thing. They run off a 1099. You'll get a statement of earnings from us. You take care of how you're going to file it with, what do you guys have in the States there? The IRA or whatever it is.
IRS.
IRS, whatever it is. But anyways, you guys deal with all that directly. But most of our agents have their own LLC. They're incorporated companies, and they have accountants that take care and run the backside of their own business. But it's a lot easier. I mean, your costs are so low. Like, what are your costs? You're not paying for a TMS system. You're not paying for insurance. Like, all those things that's why you join us.
Yeah, pay for or invest in a CPA, so then that way you can do more of what you love and not get in trouble with the government owing a lot of money, because that probably is a danger of happening if you don't have a CPA or some kind of an accounting firm. Brokering success demands a battle-ready strategy. TIE TMS equips freight brokers with the ultimate battle station for conquering a tough market. With TIE, brokers gain access to a comprehensive platform where rate intelligence and quote history converge on a single screen. It's not just a page, it's a strategic command center designed to help brokers win. TIE equips your team with all of the data they need to negotiate with confidence and allows them to communicate directly with carriers and customers from a simple control base. Revolutionize the way your brokers perform by giving them a competitive advantage with TIE TMS. For more info, go to tai-software.com/battle stations, and we also have a link for you in the show notes to sign up for a demo. I did want to ask a little bit about the international perspective, because you guys are also building out international freight agents as well, right?
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting because my background when I got into this industry a long time ago was on the international freight forwarding side. So I was involved in international air and ocean. I ran like the Asia Pacific trade lane coming into North America, which was awesome. There's so much business that comes in from Asia into North America, and then slowly got myself into where I'm right now on the trucking side within the USA and Canada. And I always thought, like, whenever you talk to these customers, we talk to them about trucking, we talk about their domestic network, and it's like there's an international opportunity that we have never even asked about. And if they're doing domestic trucking within Canada and the US, or intra USA or within Canada, they're bringing product in from overseas. And I think a lot of it just boiled down to, it's like we're missing out on this potential opportunity to really deep sell existing customers. And we thought, what, if we look at the international side of the business, this is another way, and provide a tool for our agents. Here's another revenue stream that we can give to our agents to be able to deep sell their customer and to be able to grow their own business. And it's not a hard sell when you think of it. You already have credit set up with them. You have the relationship with the customer. They know who you are. They obviously like you and trust you because they're doing business with you. In most cases, it's just an ask and just a qualification as to what international business they have. So with that thought in mind, we saw a really big revenue potential for the company to grow as a whole, offering international. Then the big thing comes up. It's like, well, we don't have any offices overseas. So how do we find the right people to partner up with? And we've joined a few freight forwarding networks where, for instance, you could have, a freight forwarder in Hong Kong, for instance, who controls all of China. And you go to these conferences, you have one-on-one meetings with them. He's got cargo coming out of Asia or out of China coming into Canada, the US, but he has no domestic agent here to help him with his delivery and following up with the consignee. Or, but anyways, these conferences I go to, they have there's usually a couple hundred agents that are at these conferences. You have one-on-one meetings with them and they all have the same need. Like, I need somebody in Canada, the US. Well, guess what? I'm going to have opportunities coming out of China or out of Vietnam or out of Europe, and I'm going to need an agent overseas to book cargo with. And it's slowly starting to get off. It's slowly starting to get off the ground, but I see a huge potential of growth coming on the international side, and more so just within our agents' existing account base. That there's international opportunities that are not necessarily a hard sell, and we have the right agents overseas to be able to handle that. So that's why I see as the opportunity.
And I think that that's such a fascinating model because when we had Anita on the show, who's she's the AR lead or AR
She's a VP of Ops. I'll tell you honestly, with all the crazy ideas I come up with for revenue growth, at the end of the day, it's going to be her team that's going to have to help on the international side. But the cool thing about it is we collaborate together on these kind of things, and we work really well with this. But she's bought into it too. She sees the potential, but she realized that's going to be putting a lot onto her and her department. But
well, she had mentioned during our conversation, and I'll link to it in the show notes in case people want to check it out. But she mentioned that one of the bigger advantages with SPI is that they do not have agent saturation, which is could you explain that for us and why it's sort of a danger that some other agent models face that?
That's a great question, Blythe, and actually that should be another point that any prospective agent that's looking to join an agency should ask is about what's the saturation like. I mean, there are a lot of companies out there that are massive that have hundreds or thousands of agents that they have working for them. I mean, we don't have to go far to name those companies, but the challenge that you hear is a lot of them say, I want to join that company. But then they learn pretty quickly when they join that company and they already have an existing account base, and they go and they put it through that system. It's like someone else is already working on that account. And how frustrating for someone to go all the way to the finish line thinking you're going to join this company and you're excited about them. They've got everything you want, yet you haven't vetted your customers through their system to see if you can actually pursue them or not. That's a challenge. So I think a big question is asking about the saturation within the market with the existing agents. And obviously, if you have low saturation, you have room to grow. And in our case, 90% of the time, we don't have any conflicts with potential agents' accounts with the accounts that our existing agents have. So that's a really, really important question to have. And yeah.
Well, I would think too, from what you just talked about with growing the international market. So it's not only that you guys are thinking about it from the lens of the saturation of it, but what other prospecting lead opportunities could you have? And the international market sounds like a perfect complement to that. So you don't have to worry about saturation within the US market, but then you also have opportunities on the international market as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of, inactive accounts within our system as well too, where, after credit expires with them and no one's pursued or no business has been done with any particular account, the agent can, go and make some contacts with some of those people as well too. So there's prospecting opportunities just we've been in business for 45 years. We don't have every single account still with you. So there's opportunities for that too. And I think, some agents come up with, they're part of a lot of lead generation where they're getting company names to go and prospect on. And we work with them, try to help them, prospect or give them the right marketing tool or marketing tools for them to help prospect and grow their business. Another big thing, which I'm a huge advocate on, which I think is the easiest way to grow your business quickly, is deep selling. I mean, it's like all low hanging fruit that is just there. You have a relationship with the account, you have credit with them. Like, those are the easiest sells. And a lot of times what happens is you're working with a particular account and you're working on whatever lanes, but there's other business that you may not even know about, or there's other people within that company that are maybe there's exporting, and maybe you're only dealing on the import side. But by really expanding the relationship within your existing account base and finding other key players that are making decisions on transportation, is a huge thing to go and pursue. And you know what, there's a lot of opportunities that come out of that. And you know, just going and visiting your accounts, having that face-to-face meeting with them, you know, having dinner with them, getting to know them. This business, I mean, we overcomplicate this business sometimes. It's all relationships. People only deal with people that they like and trust. So if you have that relationship with your customer, they like you, you know them, you know what, a lot of them are, you know, our agents are friends with their customers. You know what, it's easy to work with people that you like and trust. And sometimes we take that for granted. We need to have some sort of a secret sauce in order to close out business. Well, yes, it helps, but you know what, it's a relationship game too.
Well, on a similar note to the relationship building, the deep selling, you were just recently at TIA in Phoenix, and you were on a panel with other shippers, and they were talking about, you know, some of the sales and marketing strategies that work on them, and then the ones that don't necessarily work on them. Can you kind of give us a summary of what some
Yeah.
of those main takeaways are?
Yeah, that was a fun panel. We have a good group of people on there. So we had one guy, Michael Lynn, who was a shipper, and then we had two people that were on the broker side, but they were sharing their experiences on what's been working for them. We try to utilize that shipper panel tool as an education tool to kind of help other people understand how shippers want to be sold. And it was so interesting because you know what? I think even more so now than what it was, say, a year ago, just given what's going on with fraud and double brokering, shippers now want collaboration and they want to be educated. They what came out of it was that shippers are looking to brokers as the experts in their field, and they want to be challenged as to how they're currently doing business to find new ways to do business that's going to enhance their supply chain. So they're open to having those deep conversations. You know, obviously the broker having a conversation with the shipper as to how they're doing business, asking those right questions, but the shippers or that shipper is also expecting them to find out different ways to enhance that business. So really what came out of it was collaboration and education is a huge part what shippers are looking for. And that was even before they even talked about price, which I think sometimes, you know, we always think, oh, they're so price driven. There is a deeper aspect to selling. You know what? Collaborating, educating them on things they don't know, what the trends are going on in the marketplace. That's important. The other thing is they want brokers to have some idea as to what their business is all about, not just utilizing the same blind pitch every single time that you know, for every single shipper that you're going across, but do some good research. You know, check out their websites, understand, you know, where their offices are, what's their product. You know, do some, you know, reviews on the company, do a deep dive into the company to learn as much as you possibly can. And a lot of times what you'll find success in too is if there's a specific lane or a trade lane that they're shipping on that is a strong trade lane for yourself, sharing that with them. They want to work with experts in particular trade lanes too. So a big thing is just educating yourself about the customer and going in there with something that's going to make you sound a little bit different, but you've taken the time to show an interest in their business. That was huge too.
What does that look like, I guess, from a cold perspective? So say you don't know this shipper, you're trying to get, you know, a foot in the door. Maybe you've done some cold calls, some cold emails, and nothing is really resonating. What does that, yeah, I guess, sort of relationship look like when you're trying to establish the connection between them two?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. One of our agents, I'm gonna probably blow this for how he said it, but he goes, when you send out emails, you know what? Your chances it take you, you know, 10 emails to have one that may reply to you. But he goes, if you can try and get a phone, if you get someone on the phone, a phone call. Sorry, I think it was one phone call is getting someone on the phone and actually talking to them is worth 12 emails. So it's true. I mean, that human touch with talking to people is going to go a little bit further. Granted, you know, a lot of shippers that you talk to are busy as well too, and respect that. You know what? I think if you take a natural curiosity into their business and you're not trying to sell them right over the phone, everybody hates to be sold. Everybody does. But if you try to take that natural interest in their business and, you know, or perhaps, you know, you've done research and you found something that was interesting that may be of use to them, or perhaps they may be shipping on a certain trade lane where, you know what, you know, some, you know, market information that's going to take place the next 3 to 4 weeks that could be a benefit to them. Sharing something like that's going to have you be a little bit more setting yourself apart from the crowd than someone who's just making a canned phone call or a canned email that you're sending out to everybody. Be creative. That's the key. Be creative.
That's so I at the TMSA conference last year, we had a shipper panel as well, and one of the notes, Tony Darnell, who is
Yeah,
a shipper within the industry, I think he's actually looking for a new opportunity
good
right now.
job. He's a
But
smart guy. I like Tony, man. You know what? If anyone's actually looking for a good transportation professional, man, reach out to Tony. Tony's a good guy.
we're finding jobs for all kinds of people on this show.
Yeah, no
But
kidding, man.
he had a really great takeaway where he said that he gets so many cold emails a day, and because of the way that people send the emails, meaning the software that they use, so like HubSpot, for example, has these canned templates that you can create and you can blast out to, however many people that you want. On the end user, on the shipper end user, they know that you're sending them a templated email because it's a different color font than the traditional text that's in an email. So they immediately know that it's a templated email and they just immediately delete it. Whereas they were saying, if you just take the time to do a little research and send me a normal email like a normal person, then you're going to stand out immediately. And I thought that that was such an interesting takeaway, that the tools that you're using to save you time are actually costing you business in the long run.
You know what? It's true. You know what? Everyone, I mean, sales is a number game, no question about it. The more people you touch or you reach out to, your better your odds of success. But if you take it just one step further and just, say if your goal, whatever that number of goal is that you want to have touch points a day, but do good work along with it as well too. Don't set yourself up as different. Do that research, educate yourself about the customer. They know, and they're getting, 10, 15 calls a day from the same people with the same canned message. Set yourself up as different. I love to give a touch to this business though. Like, even the aspect, like we were talking at the TIA, someone mentioned about handwritten thank you cards. Well, guess what? That's something. You get 100 pieces of mail that come on your desk, and all of a sudden you see somebody with a handwritten card or the title of it's all handwritten. You're gonna open that first before anything else because someone took the time to write it. So that's still it's a lost art. Handwritten thank you cards. Be different.
100%. I just had a shipper on the show the other day that said he only does businesses with carriers who stop into his office and introduce themselves. And he has worked with one carrier for more than 5 years because he randomly stopped in his office and introduced himself. And that's how he got the business. And that shipper in particular, he's like, I don't want to deal with all of the fraud issues that are going on. So I'm not answering your cold call. I'm not answering your cold email. It was the guys that walked into the office that I'm doing business with because I can look them in the eye and shake their hand.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's true though. It's that human touch. It's that human.
Everything that's old, that it becomes new again. All right, last couple questions, because I was going to go through a bunch of Reddit questions, but you actually answered them unsolicited throughout the entire conversation. So I think that would be a little bit redundant to go through some of these questions. But last one that I did want to ask is, when market downturns happen, like what we're currently experiencing, should a freight agent firm or agency, should they step in and help their agents throughout the downturn? And what does that look like? Or should they just let their agents kind of figure it out for themselves?
No, that's a really good question too. I mean, obviously, the market's not the same as what it was 2 years ago. That's for sure. And some of our agents, some of their business is down. And that's where we've taken time to, chatting with our agents about their business and finding different revenue streams for them to be able to, to increase their numbers with either their existing accounts or just with new accounts too. So I think, of course, the company, I think we take a proactive approach to it. And I think every other company should take a proactive approach with helping their agents to continue to find different revenue streams for them to grow in a down market. And it's funny because, yes, we have, the revenue per shipment is down. It's funny, our revenue per shipment is down across the board. Our load count as a company is like up 15%, which is shocking. So obviously that shows that our agents are, looking for different ways to grow their business, whether it's, focusing more of their time on new prospects or looking at ways to deep sell. That all those combinations have actually helped the load count as a company actually increase. And once the rate or the revenue rates go up for the trucking, for the trucking rates, all that stuff's just going to automatically grow up or grow as a company too.
All right, last question. Where can folks, this was a great conversation, by the way, we answered and we covered a ton in this conversation.
Right.
But where can folks,
with all the questions you had, I was like, oh my goodness, we're going to be forever.
I know. Well, you definitely covered a lot of them that I was going to ask, because I had about 10 questions that I was going to ask from Reddit, but they primarily were around contracts, around pay, around prospecting, and those really were answered within other questions. So I think we kind of got it all covered. But the last one, probably the most important one, where
Yeah,
can
going
folks,
back
if
to the
they
thing,
are, oh, go
one
ahead.
thing, going back to that thing with Reddit, which I think is awesome, that the questions that they had, that's good, because you should be asking, if you're looking to join an agency, ask a ton of questions, and don't just look at one agency, look at a few and compare them against each other. And you know what, the recruiter, whoever you're talking to, should be happy to answer those questions for you. So, but ask as many questions as you can, man. You got to educate. It's got to be the right fit for you. You're making a huge commitment joining an agency network, and it's got to make sense on both sides. So ask as many questions as you can, and make sure you have that comfort level. And if it doesn't feel good in your gut, then it's probably it's not the right company to go with.
All right. And next up, we're going to talk accounts payable and tips that are specific to freight agents with SPI's head of AP department, Taryn Reeves. And today we've got the head of the AP department, Taryn Reeves, on the show. So, Taryn, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Now, I was reading through, there was like a news story recently that talked about how there's like this shortage of accounting professionals, and that, the industry is, going to be facing some productivity issues and things like that. I'm curious as to if there's a shortage now. How did you originally find yourself working, in accounting at a trucking firm, or, essentially a freight company?
Well, I actually did a short-term contract work for them back in 2008. I was leaving to go to Southeast Asia, and I knew James from when we were younger. And he said, "Hey, I need someone to fill in. Can you come for a couple of months to get some extra money?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure." So I was here way back when, and then I was actually working in automotive apprenticeship. I was doing marketing for them, and then the government decided to bring that all in-house. And so once again, I said to James, I was like, "Hey, if you need anyone to cover vacation for the summer, let me know." I had just had my second daughter, and he was like, "Oh, I need you tomorrow." Oh, okay. Not the answer I was kind of expecting. So I had 1 day training, and then I covered a 2 week vacation, and then they asked me to stay a month, and then 3 months, and then they're like, "Okay, what's it gonna take to keep you?"
Right. So I guess, what does your day-to-day role look like?
So we do all of the paperwork processing. Well, I say paperwork, but we do all the document processing for the whole firm. So anytime a carrier moves a load, we validate every single invoice, every single proof of delivery with whatever the agents put into the system to confirm that the numbers match the delivery, shipper, PO numbers, amounts, all of that match before we actually pay them.
And so, I would imagine that's a lot of like is that like a lot of manual entry, or are you, one of the, the part of the teams that are really starting to adopt, a lot of this new technology coming into the mix, or is it still something that you need to, manually verify?
So back in the day, I would have a piece of paper on my desk with all the documents. I would verify it to the screen. I would initial the bottom. I would put in all the information. Then it would get processed at the end of the week. So thankfully, we gone through a couple different systems, and we have one now that we use one email address. Every single invoice and proof of delivery goes into that. So we receive anywhere, I would say, between 350 and 400 a day.
Oh, wow.
And then because they're all in one system, I have a team that goes through and we just look at all of them one at a time. But it's a smart system, so it reads the invoice number and the amounts, and it kind of generally reads the information. So we just do a little bit of verification. As soon as we hit save on that, all the information transfers into our DMS system, our TMS system, Revenova.
Oh, wow. So then I would imagine that that's such a breath of fresh air for a lot of your responsibilities, and almost like
Mm.
a little bit of, maybe it helps ease the worry of maybe getting something wrong.
And I would say there would have been no way the growth that we've had would have happened if we still were in any of our old system.
Oh,
There's
wow.
not a chance we would have been able to cover what we do now. And plus we used to have a specific person that we had hired for filing alone. So you would do it all, you would put it in a bin, she would come in, she would take it all to the back warehouse and then file it all away. And so you have to keep original documents for, I think it used to be 10 years. So we just had a warehouse full. And then eventually they stopped sending them in, emailing them in, but we didn't have a system. So we'd still print them out, scan them in, load them in, and move forward. So thankfully, the system we have, we got, I would say just before COVID happened, and we all got sent home. And without the systems that we had in place, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have run smooth at all.
That's interesting you say that, because I remember when I worked for an asset-based 3PL and we switched TMS providers, and the TMS provider that we switched to did not have a strong accounting portion of it. And I don't know that a lot of folks realize how important, until you're already in it, until you've already, like, you're up Schitt's Creek essentially, how important the accounting features and functionality within a TMS, it really matters. Is that is that still a safe assumption?
Oh, 100%. And I would say that the one that we moved to, I wouldn't say necessarily had all the accounting side that we need, but between James and our IT support team, we have one gentleman that came in, and any questions we had, we could throw in there. And you know, those like IT gurus that could just get in the system and look at all the numbers and they could figure it all out. He kind of gurued the system for us so that everything could talk to each other as we got new different document management systems. And yeah, it was a real blessing.
That's amazing, because we've done a bunch of these interviews with SPI freight agents, and then a couple from within the the leadership team, and one of them was with Eze Peralta.
He's awesome.
He's the head of IT for SPI, and that has been one of our more popular episodes from all of like the SPI interview series. And I think it's because of what you said, like when people are really curious about how you can make these different tools and technologies sort of talk to each other in order to, because you're bringing in freight agents that have their own tech stack, that have their own things of what they're dealing with, and maybe their own processes. So maybe that's a really good segue to start to talk about, when I guess a freight agent is shopping for a new opportunity. At what point is your department brought into the mix? Are you regularly meeting with them, or maybe having those conversations around financial data and things that they need to know before they join SPI, or is that more of like the higher level executives that are talking about those?
So it's
things?
Usually once they've confirmed that they want to work with SPI, they start getting trained within our system. And then once they get their training within Revenova initially from our client support team, they get sent over to myself to talk to them a little bit how the AP side of things works. Because in all honesty, we know why an invoice is being held. We can see the 3 different systems. So if they're getting phone calls and they're like, hey, I haven't been paid, it's been 3 weeks, blah, 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 your team sucks. Then they phone us and they're like, hey, I just heard you guys suck. And I'm like, whoa, let's back up here for a second. And then I start looking, I'm like, oh, they just didn't send in or didn't update their wallet, or they just didn't send in a blank. And we just needed the notice of assignment. So when I first train them all, I tell them as soon as they get a phone call, send them to us, give them either transfer them to us or get them to send us an email, because we can see exactly where it's at. And it's usually not that we don't want to pay them or there's an issue. It's usually just something small that if they haven't received that payment, it's usually something like they don't have their ACH information in there correctly, or they have a factoring company in the system, but they didn't put it on their invoice, or something small that we can solve within a quick email or a quick phone conversation with that carrier direct.
What other things are you training the agents on during their onboarding process?
I train them in all the different email addresses where the carriers can send them. I talk to them about our fast pay program because we do offer a quick pay, and I've heard as I've been talking to them that it's one of the best in the freight industry, which is pretty nice to know. We offer a same day 2% quick pay. The only thing is we can't offer that to a first-time use. Our network won't let us override it if it's a first-time carrier. So they do have to have moved a load with us in the system for that. So as I train them about the quick pay process, and a lot of them, if there's like a blind shipment or the documents are always going to say the warehouse on them, but they're actually giving them to head office or vice versa, then we won't process them if that information doesn't match. So I always talk to them like, if it is blind, make sure you note it on the rate confirmation. If it's going to always go to a warehouse, but you're always going to note head office, just give us a heads up. We can make an exception, process those without bugging you. Because ideally, we want to be able to process everything after they've put it into the system, after they've done their part. They got their customer happy, they got their carrier happy, let me do the rest. So that's kind of where we sit. So I don't want to have to go back and forth. But obviously, agents all move different kinds of freight. So whether you're moving something to grocery stores or to empty sites and you're building something, it's going to look very different on the proof of delivery we get. So kind of as that relationship gets rolling with our new agents, if there's anything that comes up that we're being held on or we're going to them a lot, I just have another conversation with them and say, can we get confirmation we can do this moving forward or update that moving forward? And then we don't have to go back to them every time.
How long does that sort of onboarding training process take? It sounds like it might be relatively quick.
It is. And I think it depends on every different agent, because some, I don't want to say old dogs, new tricks, but some old dogs, new tricks, it's hard to teach. And so there are a lot of little things to learn within the TMS system that we use. But because we're so open, we have a huge team of client care that is a phone call away at all times. We have a really knowledgeable AR and AP team. So I would say they should be up to it as they're getting all their customers into it. They should be up and rolling within the week.
And then what I would imagine for a lot of these freight agents, so it's not just the conversation that they're having to figure out, what kind of program is right for them, payables, all of the details that come under your umbrella, but also from like their customers and their carrier perspective, what does that setup process look like for them?
Well, for the carriers, we just started using a new onboarding. So they actually have to go in on their own and they have to fill out all the information. And then once again, that's become a manual process too. So our system will either accept it or deny that carrier in general. And then our carrier setup team will do a little bit more digging to help them out to kind of get them rolling through that. For customer setup, it's very specific per agent. So if they have a customer they want to set up, they'll go to our AR team. They'll find out if they'll enter them as a prospect. Then they'll have a talk about how many loads they move. If there's any other agents, because we never want stealing going on within. Like SPI, we're such a big family and such a big team. We would never want that to like hinder. Like we've had, unfortunately, a couple agents pass away, and we've had other agents that have just like gracefully taken them in, not taken the cut, given that payment directly to their wives of the person that passed, just because they're like, we're just here to help. Like it's just hard to hit. Hits home. So yeah, it's different. Depends on the different customer they're hiring and how it rolls smoothly. But yeah, it's
typically
lovely.
It sounds like it's pretty simple setup, because I would imagine for a lot of customers, they just don't want any kind of disruption right now. They look for any kind of maybe reason, but it sounds like maybe they have a really great relationship with a lot of your agents, and then that just makes the process of moving from another freight agent program to SPI a lot more smoother. Is that a safe assumption?
And I've heard that a few times. And then as I'm training some of the freight agents, they'll say things like, "Oh yeah, we did that at our old firm. Oh yeah, I know what you're saying with that." And so they get kind of cute and like, "Oh, we know that." And I had one that called me after we had our initial talk, and he was like, "I'm just calling you." I think he called it to fill your tank, or um, there was a saying that he used. I'm not American, so it was a very American saying that he used. And he literally just gushed about how lovely it was and how comfortable he felt knowing that he's coming here. And he said, now I have this peppy cheerleader and AP that's going to help out all my carriers. And I've become like a selling feature for him to use. And yeah, it's just nice to hear.
Yeah, because I mean that kind of hints back to we were talking before we started recording that you and obviously on this interview so far, very like bubbly personality, great interview so far. I don't think that's typical of like normal logistics like accounting departments. At least ones that I've worked in. You have a couple, of course, that are very cheery, but the rest of them are just sort of just in the computer and just focused on data.
Yeah, it's really true, but I think that that's why I've kind of landed so well because I deal with truck drivers all day, so I can't really like take a phone call and be like, your paperwork doesn't match. I can never do this again. I really have to be like, that sucks. 30 days, let's get you your money. And then they're like, oh, you actually want to help me. Like, literally, my only job is to pay you. That's what I do.
That sounds like a great I mean, it doesn't sound like you're dealing with a lot of folks that are on the angry side, maybe per se. Oh well.
Oh, tread lightly there.
Let's talk about some of maybe those ongoing, I guess, sort of relationships that you have to manage with your agents, and maybe with some of their customers and carriers. What are some of those common problems that maybe pop up across a lot of different agents, maybe not just one or two?
I would say for processing side of things, unfortunately, if there's a signature that is in a carrier or a shipper location and they come back and say that's the receiver, if an auditor looks like that, they're a little more black and white and robotic than I am. So, yes, I want to believe you. But if they look at that, our customer doesn't pay us because there was no signature on it, I have to go back to these poor carriers and be like, oh, thanks for driving for 2 weeks straight, but your signature's in the wrong spot. And I think that that's probably one of the hardest parts of my job is that I don't want to not hold your money because you didn't sign it right. But if my customer is not going to approve it, then you need to figure it out on your end. So whenever I talk to those carriers, it can get a little bit heated, but I'm like, our pay terms are net 30 days. So typically our customers' pay terms are the same. So it's usually as soon as they get approval, we can release payment right away because then the auditor will be like, oh, customer's fine with it. You were okay to pay it. We're okay to move forward. So I always suggest get your shipper to sign it when you leave. Always sign it on your own. And then the receiver has no choice but to sign it either anywhere on the page or in the right spot.
Oh, interesting. So what would happen in a situation like that? Does the carrier just have to drive back to that customer and get the right signature, or does, additional approval process happen?
So it completely depends on the situation. Some of our customers, we can email almost right away and just say, hey, you received this freight. I have documentation of this. I'll go to my AR department. They'll come back and say, oh yeah, they said that this is going to be fine. And then we can process it per normal. Otherwise, we call it a hold until customer approves, and we'll send it to them. We'll invoice them with the paperwork we have. And like I said, typically they pay us within those 30 days, so we can release payment before the carrier even is notified of it. And sometimes our agents will be like, oh, no, that customer is one of my best friends. Just go for it. Or, oh, that customer, he's been with me for 35 years. Just pay for it, right? And I don't know why all of my agent mimics are always like old guy sounding. Not all of them are. Lots of them are beautiful females.
Well, let's talk about maybe what are some of the ongoing questions that not necessarily problems, or maybe some ongoing things that freight agents are coming to you with, as far as like, maybe getting paid a little bit faster, or some discrepancy on a bill. What kind of questions are they regularly coming to you that they need answers for?
I would say for additional billing is probably the number one reason why we communicate back and forth with our agents, because sometimes there's a lumper when they pick up or they deliver, and the carrier will call them and then just be like, oh, hey, I just got here, I need a lumper. And they're like, yeah, go for it, I'll pay you. And then they'll forget, they won't be at their computer, they won't put it in. I get an invoice. Now I'm being invoiced an additional $250. And so then we have to go back to the agent to talk to them about that. I would say that's probably the number one, is like either waiting charges, because a lot of the times they are just on the phone and then they're like, hey, I've been waiting here for 3 hours and it was only supposed to take an hour. And our agents will be like, oh yeah, no problem. I'll pay you the extra $100 for waiting. I really appreciate you. They forget to email, they forget to add it to the system, whatever the case may be. And then we get that additional billing. So I would say that those are usually the number ones, and or vice versa. They talk to a carrier and they said like, hey, you were 4 hours late. My customer is going to deduct this. I need to deduct you. They'll deduct it in the system, but the carrier tried to kind of pull one over and send us the original rate confirmation with the original invoice. So I would say mostly it's amount differences, not necessarily paperwork issues, if that makes sense.
It does,
Yeah.
definitely.
Now, before we started having this conversation, I went to Twitter/X to ask, because I have a lot of freight brokers and agents that follow me on social media. And so I asked, freight brokers, what are some common things that you would want to know to do your job better from the accounting team? And I got a couple different responses. One was very friendly and genuine approach to want to work with the AP team, because I think that there's, from my experience working at, a 3PL, there were some times when, you had some shadier actors within the company that were trying to pull one over on the accounting team, and the accounting team just stood up for themselves and said, no, we're not going to do that this way here. So from this question from Mike, he has the very friendly and genuine approach of wanting to work consistently and develop a great relationship with the AP team. And he says, oddly enough, I've been engaged with our accounting team around payables aspect and best practices. So this episode is going to be a timely listen for him. He goes on to say that a lot of the best practices he's worked with them on is average days to pay and quick pay process were the ones we touched on. Also talking through document management workflow internally, because that's been an opportunity for us from the carrier side of things to the accounting team to bill the customer. Is that a good example of how maybe, a freight broker or a freight agent can work well with the accounting team?
For sure. And our pay terms, like I said, are net 30 days from the date we receive a valid invoice and proof of delivery, which we're pretty much on point if you pull any of our reports to be at that mark. It kind of comes into an issue with any of those quick pay questions, only because some of the carriers want to take the load because they'll get quick paid. But obviously, that's a service that we offer, and we can't offer that on a first load moved. So it kind of becomes a little bit of an issue. So for those ones, there is a way around it, and we request them mail the originals to head office. And as soon as we have that original bill of lading in head office, my system will let me override it so I can still pay them that exact same day.
Oh, wow.
And so because the pay terms are 1% for 5 days as well, usually it takes about 5 days to get here. So I'll deduct it for the 1%, give it same day pay term when I got it, but it'll be the 5-day percentage deduction, because then it helps them out, helps us out, and we can still offer that service.
And it sounds like, if I'm reading between the lines here, it sounds like you're genuinely trying to get people paid as soon as possible, but you still have to cover your own basis and cover your own tracks.
And it's very unfortunate that since double brokered loads have kind of come into play a little bit more recently. Mark Funk is one of our directors, and he was talking to me about there was a little bit of a drop in the economy back in 2008. And he said back then, double brokered loads really kicked into high gear, and he kind of saw the same thing within this year again. And my heart breaks, because you talk to this. I always think they're ma and pa's that are getting ripped off. They probably aren't, but you get a call from this ma and pa that moved this load. They can't find their money, and I'm digging around for paperwork, but somebody else has invoiced me. And so now we're trying to figure this out with this cute little ma and pa company, whereas it's someone that's trying to scam us. So it's my heart breaks, and it's I want to give you your money. I know you did the work. I know your husband's on the road, and I'm trying to deal with this, right? And so, yeah, those ones are a little bit trickier.
So how do you navigate towards it to figure out, who is legitimate and then who isn't?
So with the new implementation of the uploading for carrier process that we have, it's really starting to streamline. They have a lot of kind of hoops they have to go through in order to become a legitimate carrier. If we always look for the carrier name that's on a bill of lading. And so sometimes those are correct, sometimes they're incorrect, sometimes they're shipper error. So you kind of have to, it's kind of a gray area, but it needs to be pretty black and white. And then when in doubt, we always request the original, because legally you have to pay whoever has the original bill of lading. So if it ever gets to that point where we're super doubtful and we have no idea who moved this load, I've received 3 calls from 3 different carriers or 3 different factoring companies, because a factoring company, they've hired to handle all of their receivables. And so if they're sending a rate confirmation and a bill of lading to a factoring company, they call us for the verification, oh, I have a different carrier in my system. Then the question starts coming up. And so sometimes I'll get a call from 2 different factoring companies, that same load, that both have paperwork for it. And that's when we've kind of gotten a red flag. So we have little pre-alerts that we can put in our document management system. We get Mark Funk involved, and he's been so beneficial and takes, I say he has a really, really hard backbone, because he's just like has to deal with all of that. And so anytime I'm feeling some kind of way, I'll just call him and be like, okay, my heart's breaking. What are you doing with this? And he's really amazing.
Well, I feel like I really want to ask Mark Funk this next question, because the next response that I got on Twitter was a little bit more colorful when asking how to work better with the accounting team, because, and I quote, he says, "I look in the mirror and I ask that department why in the hell they waited so long to get the invoices out. The reply from the accounting department is always, shut the F up and stay in your damn lane." So obviously a response like that, he's dealt with some frustrations from other accounting departments, not yours, obviously.
Clearly. Like, I couldn't imagine anyone in our head office talking to any of our agents like that ever. So he's talking about the accounting department for invoicing his customer. So that's a little bit on the other side, because that's an accounts receivable side of things. So for accounts payable, if everything's not matching, we technically can't invoice your customer, because they're not going to pay it if it didn't deliver to the right location, it didn't have the right pickup or purchase order number, if it didn't have, like, so there's kind of stipulations where we can't invoice the customer if the amount doesn't match, and we invoice the customer without the lumper, and we go back to them like, hey, PS, pay us another $250. They're not going to be like, oh, okay, sure, I would love to. They're going to be like, well, I paid my original invoice, you can wait on that. And so some of those amount differences get the hold off for invoicing the customer as well. So there is a lot more to it than just invoice your customer. But we do try, like, we are same day to 24-hour data entry. Just because of our fast pay program, we need to get through pretty much all 400, 350 invoices daily. And so because of that, all of our customers get invoiced at the same time. As soon as we've validated that proof of delivery, that gets sent out to the customer. Thank the good Lord, that's all automatic in the system too nowadays. And so I would say it's a lot more streamlined, that hopefully what this gentleman that messaged you is dealing with.
Yeah, it looks like there's a little bit of heat behind that. There's a little spiciness behind that response. So, but you had mentioned that the fast pay program, a couple times now. I think you also said it's one of the best in the nation. Can you tell us a little bit more details about that?
I was training one of the agents last week, and so maybe it was 2 weeks ago, and they always talk to us about whether or not we offer fast pay. And so I told him our fast pay terms. He's like, oh, that's the best there is out there. I'm like, oh, well, thanks. And so we recommend, if they are requesting it, to send it to a different email address, because then it kind of doesn't get lost in the mass of the 350, 800 invoices over the couple days that we receive them. And then we can review it right away, look at it, let them know if we need anything, let them know that they have to update, because sometimes they don't even have their ACH information or EFT in Canada information in the system. So if they're looking for a quick pay and we're sending them a check, they're going to wait, because they all go from Texas, but they're going to end up waiting however many days in the mail for that check to get there. So there is a couple things that we double check with them just to make sure same day means same day, because that's kind of a big deal.
And so, as you're evolving these, training these new agents that come on, and you're continuing that relationship with them, what do you wish that they knew about your job to make your job easier?
Ooh, good question.
Because if you make the accounting team happy, everybody else is happy.
And I think that what I always train them on is just give us a heads up. Because if you have 10 trucks going into a warehouse and it's going to be first come, first serve basis, but you've put load A, B, C, D, and then carrier A picks up load C, but that's not what it says in my system, it's going to get stopped, and we're going to have a lot of back forth on all 10 of those loads. So if they just gave us a heads up that says, hey, I have 10 loads moving out of here, first come, first serve basis, whatever PO number gets picked up there, you can just put it into the system. As long as we get all 10, we're good to go. that simple email would put a pre-alert on 10 different loads, and as those came in, we would be able to update for invoicing all of their customers, and it would all run smoothly. So, because obviously it's up to the carrier whenever they feel like invoicing us, right? So if they, end of the month, they decide like, oh, I'll bring in my accounting to come and invoice all of these now, then it might take a whole month for us to get a couple of those. But if we already received 8 of them, we could have processed 8 of them instead of waiting for all 10 in those last 2 at the end of the month. And then it kind of keeps everything rolling smooth.
Yeah, so communication sounds like is very key, as with a lot of other aspects in life. Now, we've talked a lot about, the existing freight agents that are shopping new programs, that are onboarding with you guys and continuing that relationship. But what about for maybe some potential like freight brokers that are looking to maybe make the leap in the future? What are some best practices that they should be looking at with how they're managing their finances, their payables, things like that, to set them up for success?
I think that as long as they are managing their finances and their payables, they're going to be on a pretty good term. Because if they come with no book of business, they come not knowing where they stand on any end already, then they're going to come in and not know if they're succeeding or failing at SPI. And so I think if they come in already knowing a little bit about their own business, then they'll be able to see that having the back office support at head office is actually going to let them focus on their customer growth. Because that's pretty much the point. The more agents get to focus on their customers and we get to kind of handle the day-to-day, then they're going to just be able to grow bigger and bigger, right? And that's kind of what they're in business for themselves and to grow their business. And so they don't want to handle the day-to-day invoicing and PO numbers and data entry part of it. And so I think if they come into our business already knowing where they're sitting and or failing succeeding, they'll see that we can help them succeed in a lot of different ways.
That's very well said. And as we round out this sort of section of questions, before we get to, the final segment of the relatable 8 questions, anything that you think that I didn't ask that you think is important for, current freight agents, potential freight agents to know about working with the accounting team?
I would say if you're coming in as a freight brokerage that moves LTL loads, just tread lightly, because LTL is a lot and has a lot of hidden fees in it. So the final charges that you're going to have are always going to be different. So always audit your billing before you complete a load in your system. Because if you're auditing it first and then complete it, then there's not going to be any surprises for you.
Oh, great little added insight there. That was awesome. So thank you for that. And, as just mentioned, the Relatable 8, this is a section of the interview that the audience has come to really know and love over the last few months. We've been asking this set of questions, to just sort of, it's kind of breaking the ice, but not really, because it's towards the end of the conversation. So, but with all that said, let's get to the first one. How do you think about marketing when it comes to you and your company? Because I imagine, appearing on, a podcast like this is definitely a form of marketing. So how do you think about that sort of process? Is this your first podcast interview? Have you done others in the past?
This is actually my first podcast interview. And I think that marketing obviously comes with a little bit of challenges of its own, because the bigger you grow, the more you get known, the more kind of, I don't want to say scammers come out, but the more that that scammers come out. And so when we were just kind of like happy-go-lucky little family in head office just doing our work, right? It kind of changed the dynamic as well, because the bigger you get, the more corporate you get, the little less family that the whole head office starts to feel like. And but I think it's great. Our marketing team is doing fantastic. They sent us out fun Yeti cups during COVID. Mine's all like obviously washed off now, but I find even having something like that is so fun, because when you're out and about and people are like, oh, SPI, I work for, and then they start talking to you about all sorts of things. Or even with my kids when we're driving, you'll see a truck go by. They're like, oh, do you pay them? Do you pay them? Like, oh, no, not them. Oh, I pay them every day.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's great. And kudos to the marketing team over at SPI, because they're doing fantastic things. And also kudos to you for this being your first podcast interview. I imagine it's not going to be your last, because you've been fantastic so far. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
And then we have the next question. What's your favorite social media platform and why?
Okay, I'm pretty lame when it comes to social media. But I would say Facebook is still probably the one I use the most, but mostly because that's where I get all the invites to anything that's going on in my friend group from, because everybody posts on there. My husband's really into Instagram, which I also think is kind of fun, and but I wouldn't say that I'm really on it. But so I guess it would be Facebook. Professionally LinkedIn, but I only go on there because people connect with me. I'm like, yep, you look like a connection too.
I love that. All right, next one. What is your favorite SaaS tool that you use every day and can't live without?
Oh, definitely. Well, it used to be called HubTrans, but now they call it TriumphPay Audit, and that's the document management system I was talking about. There is absolutely zero chance the growth that we've had in our company would have happened without having a platform like that to manage our documents.
Oh, that's awesome. Hell yeah. I'm clipping that out just to, to send it over to the Triumph page.
Oh, I should have put on the hat. They gave me a hat when they were here. I like swag.
Nice. So if you're hearing that and you're listening, go send Taryn some swag. All right. Now, next one. What is your favorite freight business that isn't your own?
Well, I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for C&D Logistics. The owner there, his name's Dana, and he was actually a coach on a Canadian junior football team, and I used to cheerlead for them, and my husband came and started playing for them, and that's how we met.
Aww.
So I kind of have a soft spot for C&D.
That's a great one. Awesome. This has been my favorite answer so far for this section. Okay, what's one task in your current job that you can't stand doing?
Oh, definitely telling carriers that the signature is in the wrong spot. I think that it breaks my heart every time, because I know you did the job. I know you got there. I know you left. And then I have to say, P.S., they signed it wrong. Like, you're tired. You drove all day or all week or for 2 weeks or crossing borders or whatever the case may be. And you have this annoying chick in AP that's like, oh, the signature is wrong. Bye. And I think that that's probably my number one pet peeve.
That's got to be a tough one to deal with on, a regular basis, to have to tell folks who already have enough on their plate that, there's a little caveat and that's going to delay in them getting paid. So yeah, I wouldn't like that one either. Okay. So next one, if you didn't have to worry about money, what would you want to do for the rest of your life?
Ooh, that was a good one. I liked it. I kind of started thinking through this after I read that, actually, because I really like serving my family. Like, I just think that it's pretty awesome to be like all about the kids and all about my husband and kind of being a personal chef. And there's not very much tradition in my family because my mom was adopted, my husband's dad was adopted, so it kind of lost a lot of like the traditions being passed down. So I think that if I didn't have to work, I would probably travel to a lot of little like remote little towns throughout the world and kind of work with all those, I say little grandmas, but that's kind of sexist, so little grandmas or grandpas that are cooking and like baking all day, and I would like to learn how they like use their spices or picked them or dried them, and I would like to learn all those like little tips and tricks for cooking from like, yeah, those little remote towns throughout the world.
I love that, because that was one of the first things I know, say what you will about TikTok, but my feed, especially during COVID and like during lockdowns, I never got so much inspiration from that platform than watching like these grandmothers in like Lebanon, like cook over this open fire pit on like a stove that looks like it's 100 years old. It's just amazing. And
have you ever seen those little places? They're like rolling their own gnocchi.
Yes.
Like they're just like do it with that little fork thing and the special, and all of a sudden they have this huge bin. You're like, how? You try and it turns into like, I don't know, this twisty ravioli. You're like, what just happened?
I tried to make wontons the other day and it was a disaster. So this is very recent for me. I spent about 6 hours trying to do this, and ultimately I just emptied them all out and decided to do a stir fry.
Were you trying to close up the wonton fully?
Yes.
Yeah. Because
It
if there's
was
any sort of oils or any of the food that hits the outside of that, you're hooped from the beginning.
it was a disaster, and I
Yeah.
probably maybe should have contacted you in order to get these tips ahead of time. And I wasted a lot of time before I knew it was 11 p.m. at night, and I was like, I have to go to bed. It's
And you haven't eaten.
right. That's why we had the stir fry. All right, we got a couple more. What is something you believe in that most people don't?
I think so. Obviously, I don't know if no one else believes in it, but we all were obviously given a purpose in this world. There is a problem in the world that only one person is able to solve. And I think that there's a difference between being on your path for whatever that problem is to solve versus being in your like divine purpose versus your divine assignment. Because obviously my purpose isn't necessarily data entry at a freight brokerage, but I think that my assignment is doing this and being able to raise my family and learn how to make wontons. But so I think that knowing that difference and knowing that just because you're not living quote unquote your dream at the moment doesn't mean you're not in the right spot and you're not doing the right assignment you're supposed to be in right now.
Love that. Definitely. It's life is a pathway, and you have to partake in all of the journeys of the pathway. So last one, what is your favorite supply chain or logistics fact?
Well, okay, so this one was kind of funny because I was talking to one of our agents that's been with us a long time. He used to even work in head office as well, in the operations section in the back. And we were just chatting about, I was watching a show called Ridiculousness. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yes.
So I was watching that, and it kept on having all of these trucks running into the bottom of overpasses. And it was like a little segment Rob Dyrdek did. And I was laughing so hard. I'm like, so I was talking to him. I'm like, these truck drivers are so ridiculous. I don't know where they're hiring them. And he says to me, he's like, Taryn, there's always the height on the overpass, but where they measure that height might be the wrong spot. So if they measured it in the middle of the overpass, but your truck is driving to the right of it, you may think that you had the clearance, but then you've run into it because it's on the right-hand side and it's a little bit lower on the outside. I'm like, oh, they're not all just silly. It was just a mistake. So I think that was kind of a fun fact of the logistics industry that I never put two and two together on.
Yeah, I've never heard that either because I have the same reaction. I see that and I'm like, well, why didn't you know that? Like, why didn't the broker tell you that this overpass existed and your truck wouldn't be able to go under this bridge? And so I immediately like want to point the blame at everyone, but really we should, I guess, be pointing the blame at the engineer or the construction.
Or whoever is the person, maybe is it the city planner that puts that height on it? Like maybe there should be inside and outside on all of them. I don't know what the case. I don't know who's in charge of that, but whoever it is, if you're listening, you should add a double one.
It's also very, I think, severely like underfunded. I know in the States, at least, like our infrastructure for like inspecting bridges and dams, like it's very underfunded. So I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there that wish, maybe they could, change a lot of those things, but you probably don't realize, some of those issues are a thing until someone unfortunately crashes into it.
Could you imagine what these truck drivers did before like Google Maps came into play? Like I just picture, because obviously it gives you best route, but imagine back in the day you were following one of those maps that like came out from like the roof, and then you followed one thinking you could go there, but it came to like something where you had to try to turn around or back down this like windy rural road or something. There's been so much. What are you going to do?
You probably have no service anyways, and you probably didn't even have a phone when you were using some of these, giant Rand McNally map books that my dad still swears by. So he'll use those.
I love your dad now.
So he'll use both.
Right.
Well, this was a fantastic interview, fantastic answers to these questions. I guess my last remaining one is, if anybody who's interested in becoming a freight agent for SPI, where should they go to for more information? I'm sure we'll have a link in the show notes for them, but any, last remarks that you want to leave the audience with?
Well, obviously, just go to our website and you can go from there. There's a spot on there for agents that are looking to get involved, carriers if you're looking for information, or customers if you're trying to figure out to find an agent, because there's some customers that might be interested and not realizing they could save a lot of money using a 3PL versus just shipping on their own. Um, so I would highly recommend just going to the website and feeling it out. And everybody at head office is super helpful, and you could call, you'll be able to get a hold of somebody that'll talk you through it.
Absolutely. Now, for just talking to the audience for a second, if you love the energy that Taryn had on this interview, which I obviously did, then you should know that the rest of the SPI team has very much the same sort of just positive energy. That's why I like working with them so much. So Taryn, thank you again for coming on the show. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Hope you enjoyed that conversation. Now let's talk IT and the minimum technology that your freight agent program should have with SPI's VP of Tech, Eze Peralta. Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and I'm happy to welcome in Eze Peralta. He is the VP of Technology at SPI Logistics, and we're going to be talking about the role that IT plays at a 3PL. So Eze, welcome into the show.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Now, for folks who may not be familiar with you and your background, kind of give us an idea of how you first started off with technology. When did you know that technology was, or IT infrastructure was going to be your career path?
Well, I think at a very, very early age, I started using computers when I was age 4. That was
wow.
first computer. My dad was into learning graphic design and this kind of thing, so he got an old Mac. And that was kind of like love at first sight. Started on the graphic design, more like Illustrator, Photoshop, that kind of stuff. Then but always really interested in how things really work and the mechanisms behind it. I always knew that I was going to get into coding one day. And then, used my first experience with databases was with some custom built database that I did for a small business that I had with I used to do screen printing. So I created the software for that business, and then created software also for other like small businesses like that. And then my first like bigger job opportunity was at an online travel agency where we were with a friend. We were developing the data warehouse and all their analytics solution. So that was my first like bigger project, and that was kind of like what led me to SPI. The first project that I did for SPI with my friend Valentin, who is now also working with SPI, was the data warehousing tool, and that was our first experience. Then I got the offer to come on board, and thanks to the trust of of our leadership team, Mitch and Joe Chandler, that's when all started in logistics for me. And I have to say, I'm really thankful that of all the learning process that I had in SPI about the freight industry, because when I just first started, it was very new to me. I had an idea of the brokerage model from online travel agencies, but I learned so much from everyone here, and very grateful for that.
So can I nerd out with you for a little bit? How do you build a database?
More than that, building a database or an implementation of a database model for a company. Generally, there is a lot of research on the data model, on the design of the data model, right? What is the scope and the grain of the data that you want to store? It's like you want to store things by date. Is your business related to timing issues? Is related to quantities? Is related to more a very general level? Then, for example, for a freight brokerage or these are very complex data models because, for example, people usually tend to oversimplify, but it's a lot about thinking about how you model reality into an abstraction, or in this case, a database. But it's a lot about talking with the actual business experts in order to know how they think about things and try to translate that into a mechanism that will fulfill those requirements. Something that I noticed analyzing data models for TMS systems is many times there's like a glitch or an error or an issue on finding that granularity. For example, okay, you model a load, right? But then what happens if that load has many line items and each one of those line items go into a different truck? And then that truck has maybe a team, right, driving. So then you have the driver. So then you're doing tracking on a driver, but then that load changes driver, and then, but it's all in the same order, right? And the customer will want to see that as one, right? But as one order, but maybe on the carrier side they will see a piece of that order, and you don't want also that data to leak, right? Or so it's a lot about that. Like designing databases is one of my main, I don't know, I really like it, the data modeling aspect of it. But yeah, that's usually
because from what I understand, and I'm very like loose sort of. Oh, I like to consider myself as tech savvy, but I don't. That walking into a server room at a 3PL was my big like eye-opening moment. Like, wow, this is how a lot of the functionality of how things work. But then you're talking about sort of the inside guts of that server itself and how you're programming different texts and different, I guess, TMS, the information that you're reading within a TMS, you're coding that a certain way so the database understands it. So if you're looking to pull records or sort records, then it will be pulled correctly. Is that a kind of a general overview?
Yeah, and for example, the main challenge, one of the main tasks that I had when I started with the data warehousing project here is that we had at that time 3 different TMS systems in production. So there was a group of agents using a legacy system that was a client server system. Then there was a group of agents working with a web version of that same TMS system. And then there was a subset of agents working with the newer TMS system that we were migrating to. Eventually, we'll get everyone into the newer TMS system. But in the meantime, we needed to have our KPIs every day on how the business is doing. Now, one system will say, okay, a load has these fields, right, or these columns. But the other system would say, well, a load for us is these other columns, right? So we needed to create basically all the architecture and the database modeling to pull all that into a common model that will be able to tell us, no matter where the load is coming from, no matter the TMS, kind of build that SPI owned abstraction over the business objects that we are dealing with. Because what is a load or what is an order for SPI? It might not be the same of what is an order for ABC TMS or XYZ TMS. So yeah, that was actually one of the main challenges. That's how I learned a lot about the freight industry itself, by just seeing how information is stored in these systems, right?
And so what is, I guess, for folks who may not be aware, what is the, I guess, positive outcome or maybe dangerous outcome of not having a database that's properly maintained and organized? What could be the, I guess, the downstream effects of that not being the case, not being properly optimized?
I think you lose power on the insight, right, that you can get from your data. I think everyone is familiar with the term garbage in, garbage out with data management, right? And then I think more important than the data that is stored in each table on the database, then you have the aspect of the relationships, right? How does relate this a load? How does relate a load with a stop? How does relate a stop with a tractor? How does it relate with? And not having that model properly gives you a lot of issues that you don't know that you're having, because it's hard to know or hard to see an issue where you don't know there's an issue there because it was never there. It's not something that it was done and then it broke. It was never there. So basically, I think the main point would be losing possibility of insight in the future over your own data and operation.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like for, the marketers out there, or the sales leaders out there, it's, having a lot of crap leads maybe in your CRM. Like it looks good to have 20,000 leads in that CRM, but if it's crap or if they're fake email addresses or something, then, you're not going to find out until you actually go to start sending them messages.
Yeah, or you end up, because maybe from a lead you cannot convert that into they didn't model the proper follow-up objects of, okay, a lead becomes an opportunity becomes an account, and maybe if you're missing some of those tables where to store information, or you don't have those relationships there in the data, then you will end up basically putting all that into another system or in a spreadsheet, or kind of like, building something around it, and that's when things start to go sideways, because all the purpose of implementing software is to fulfill a business need, right? And then you start kind of adapting your processes to the software instead of the opposite. And I think, that's not a good path.
And so when so how long ago did you join SPI?
I started with SPI in 2018.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I guess organizing the databases was a big part of your job initially. So what does your sort of the day-to-day look like for you now? Is it managing that database now?
More than database, I think I'm more focused on the business processes and how trying to see the overall picture besides the operational side of the freight brokerage portion. When I started here, one of my main goals was to talk with the team who is actually using the software. The client care team has been so helpful. The AP and AR team has been so helpful in teaching me how they use the software. And they came up with all these, is there a way how we could do this instead of, entering this spreadsheet data into this system? Is there a way we could do it better? And then we started talking about it, and like, we came up, in some cases we realized that we didn't need that spreadsheet to start with because there was another way where so instead of running into the implementation of a software solution to do that, we started questioning, do we need that spreadsheet to start with? Do we need that process overall to start with? Or maybe doing a couple of changes in the process will basically define all your problems out of scope, and get rid of all these problems without even implementing any software. Because for me, I prefer to write less code, and I prefer to maintain less infrastructure, less software, and the code that never fails is the code that is never written, right?
Oh, very true. Nice.
so I feel happy when I get to delete code, right? Because I'm decreasing complexity basically in many cases. Sometimes you need to add, but I think that's like an overall rule for everyone into the software world is not go after implementation right away. It's like, okay, what are you want to implementing? Is it necessary at all?
And I think that I love that you said that you actually talked to employees before you started implementing a lot of different tech solutions or trying to essentially put a Band-Aid on a broken leg. I think that that's what a lot of organizations do, is that they just see the shiny new piece of software, the shiny new piece of tech, and they just go ahead and buy it, and then they throw it on the team that's actually going to use it, and the team hates it. So I think that I love that you answered that question that way, where you're talking to the team before you actually make those tech investments. Is that has that I would imagine that's proven successful for you guys to actually talk to the team members first, right?
Yes, for sure. And there needs to be a balance, because sometimes people will want to, of course, stick to the old ways and the way they're doing things, the way they know. So there's a lot you need to also kind of like encourage them to where they're going to see the improvement. And I think sometimes there's some sort of arrogance from people from the software, where it's like, oh, why people are hating this so much if it's so much better than what they already do? Well, they are the ones let's listen to what they have to say, because they might have good points, and maybe there's little tweaks that we can do in order to fit those needs. So yeah, it's proven successful, and I think trying to see see it as an overall approach besides operations and TMS and then back office. But because let's say you get a new TMS system, right, and then then you increase your order count by an order of magnitude, right? You have 3 times more loads, right? Okay, now you have to pay them. Now you have to build them. Now, if your back office is working on spreadsheets and printing checks in your office, then suddenly you're going to find out, or you need a bigger printer, or you need more. What people do is, okay, you have all these maybe super fancy software doing the order management, but then on the billing side, you have basically an office with a bunch of people doing very repetitive work, and then you're in whatever you're winning on one side, you are basically losing on the other side. So it needs to grow all together. I think that has been my idea from the beginning. Like putting a lot of focus on the back office has proven also successful.
So give us, I guess, a sense of the tech stack that SPI, that SPI sort of, I would imagine that the TMS is sort of the backbone of the entire organization. And then what do those additional tools sort of look like? Are you, investing in third-party software and integrating that into the TMS, or what does the tech stack look like for a typical freight agent coming on board?
Yeah, so the tech landscape, at the center, I would say we're trying to move the TMS from the center of the tech stack, and of course, it's always going to be the center of the stack because it's a transportation management software and it's built for it. It's where most of the domain lives, right? All the objects that have the naming of what we deal with: load, stop, driver, carrier. That lives in the TMS. But that's not everything to the business. So we have the CRM, which is how we get our leads for new agents, and then we have our AR and AP, right? So we used TriumphPay for processing payments. We use them also for doing OCR on the PODs that we receive. So all that process automated. So we built an integration with them, so we can basically automatically submit the payments and audit if a payable is ready to be sent, then we send it. But if not, it will go into a different queue where we're going to evaluate. Okay, there's a mismatch on there's an exception on the mismatch on the amounts or whatever it is. Then we have all the load boards, right? DAT, track stop. Then we're onboarding now with Parade for doing digital matching. We also have Kleinschmidt for EDI connectivity, connecting with all the EDI value-added networks and FTP providers. Then we have we're using AcuFreight for LTL, and then we have some bots initiatives also for those sites where there's no API to call. We also have we create our own visibility sharing platform. I would say it's all in the background. There's no user interface, but we basically created these reusable components to be able to share location data with any of our shippers, no matter the system they use. So we have now 4 kites, P44. So we're feeding their systems with our location data that we get from the tracking providers. We have MacroPoint, P44, and tracker tools. We like to always offer like a few options because, features that we don't have in one, we can get from another one. And when I was talking about trying to not have the TMS at the center, is that we built and we are continuing the process of continuing building an integration layer, or what we call SPI data services, where for any integration that we do, we integrate the TMS and the data sources with our SPI data services platform. And from there, we can feed data to the data warehouse and also feed any other data source. So we created some custom libraries or code libraries to reutilize in our own integrations we deploy all this in our own infrastructure in the cloud, trying to follow all the best practices regarding security, observability, governance, and all these things. And that has proven also a good approach, like owning your own integrations. I think that's a key, because you cannot be waiting for your software provider to integrate a system, because maybe that's not something they want to do, because maybe it's not good for their customer base. But in our case, we cannot be waiting for another vendor to say, oh yeah, we're gonna integrate this, and maybe they integrate it, but maybe they don't integrate the data points you need, and then you waited all that time,
Right.
and it's like, well, it doesn't work for me now. So yeah, we built quite a nice, I think, platform to allow us get the best features from every vendor, but give them a context and a process and a way of using it, and a documentation, and to make it work for us.
And it almost sounds like it's like an Apple, like an Apple store with a bunch of apps that you can kind of pick and choose on which ones that you want to use as a freight agent. Is that a safe bet, or is it kind of, this is the suggested tech stack that you should use for X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, actually, one point, it's SPI is a network, right? So each office is different, and SPI embraces this difference. Instead of trying to equalize and or trying to say, no, this is the way how you should do things. Of course, we have proposed best practice. Of course, we have how we think things should be done, but also we understand there are as many ways of working as dispatchers and brokers are, and even in that best practices path, a lot of complexity and differences, right? So we try to embrace that. So if someone wants to use EDI for their tenders, but then they want to use load boards in certain way, then we set them up for that, right? But then if someone else says, "Oh, actually, I want to feed my loads from a separate system," well, then we will evaluate if that the complexity of the project, and then if we can do it, then we will just integrate it. And so we try to make it so it's evolvable. So because maybe tomorrow you will want to incorporate a new tool, okay? So we just plug it in, right? And we adapt to the complexity and the requirements of each agent, basically. So some agents, we had the case, for example, with the LTL, the TMS we use, it has a good LTL integrations, but for people who is focused on LTL, they need maybe an LTL focused TMS or software, right? So what we did is we created an integration where they book their loads in an LTL oriented software, which is AcuFreight, and then we sync that data with our main TMS. Then our R&D team, they don't even know where that payable or billing came from. So if it came from TMS 1 or TMS 2, it's a billing and it's a payable. You should audit it and you should pay it, or you should bill it to the customer. So that's kind of the approach that we want to have, where if you come to SPI and it's like, oh, actually I want to use this combo of features or this combo of things, well, we can make it happen. And yeah.
So I guess when you're, or a new agent is thinking about joining SPI, do they typically meet with you or somebody else from the tech team in order to answer some of those questions? And if so, what are some of those common questions that they're asking?
Yeah, so sometimes they would meet with me before onboarding, just to get to know. I would give a demo of the system. Our client care team can give demos too, but sometimes they want something more specific, or I want to know how EDI tendering looks like in your platform. Okay, and then we do it. Or what options do you have for tracking, how the reporting works, or so generally, yeah, we do a demo. They explain what they need, and then we explain what is the toolkit that we have in order, you know, to fit those needs, and how we can make it work. Um, and again, sometimes because we are a small team, we are not a software company, so we need to evaluate it. Our resources are also limited, so it might take more time for us to build something than if a software company, software company. But in reality, because we have already so much already built, it becomes faster. So we're not starting from zero, right?
Mm-hmm.
You already have all this toolkit, and it's basically grabbing this piece, this piece, this piece. This is how we can make it work for you.
And so I would imagine for a lot of these folks that are interested in becoming a freight agent, and they contact you guys, and they're ready to move forward, I would imagine that they would be saving a considerable amount of money by, using some of the licenses and the software tools that you guys have already spent an incredible amount of not only money but time as well investing into these platforms. But what if somebody wants to keep, say they've had a load board for years, or they've had their own sort of CRM for years? Can they keep that valuable data? Can they migrate it over, or do they have the option to keep it and still within their, I guess, their own ecosystem?
I think, yeah, I think they have both options, or the three options. They could keep it on their side. Of course, whatever data they need to enter as part of SPI will be shared. They can choose to migrate that into our operational system, or they can choose to migrate that into our data warehouse for just to store it, and then start fresh with a new install of the TMS. But that's something that we usually do. For example, people has this big list of locations or customers, so we have processes to just upload all that into our platform, and then so yeah, they have both options. And even, yeah, if they're using a specific load board, and if that load board has an API, then we will work with them to integrate it. Same for visibility sharing, or this is a very common requirement that we have is, oh, my shippers are wanting, to get a daily file with the location of all their shipments, and we can set that up in a day. And I don't know how is the process in, but if a small broker, like a one person operation, would want to build that out, to send a daily visibility file or real time updates to their shippers, they will have not only to buy software but also work with to really adjust all the little knobs and
They probably don't have time for that.
and that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. The timing. That's something that it gets forgotten. People are on their day to day doing stuff and doing their, taking care of their orders, and they don't want to spend that extra time, and they shouldn't have to.
And so I imagine, after, maybe some of those initial questions are answered, a new agent signs and they're ready to get rolling. What does that, I guess, onboarding time look like? Because I know for, a lot of folks, it's, you got to manage the freight every single day, all day, every day. So any kind of, I guess, time away from that is almost seen as a frustration. So how do you sort of mitigate that level of frustration as they're onboarding and learning these new systems? What does the time period look like, and how do you, I guess, you make it as easy on them as possible?
So we have an amazing client care team that will give the training. We have a portal where you have videos on the training for the TMS. We can upload the locations and customers, and we do all the credit check and all of that before their go live date. So by the time they get their login, people can go in the system and start booking loads from day one. From day one,
wow.
you can book your loads, and that including posting to load boards. Our onboarding we put a lot of effort in automating the onboarding process and tracking it. So we schedule our training sessions. Um, After those training sessions, if there's a need of upload these locations for data, we do that. So by the time agreed with the new agent, they can start booking loads day one. And then, of course, like getting used to a new software, maybe you are slower at the beginning, and then you start getting up to speed, entering more new customers and these kind of things. But
it sounds like too, it's one of those things that you don't really know, I think, how it's going to impact your daily life until you're in the new system. And so it kind of goes back to your earlier point about defining what those processes look like. And then maybe, it's changing a little bit of your processes on your end of things in order to speed up things later on. So they're not only, saving money on a lot of these different licenses, but they're also getting better and more access to different licenses that they probably didn't have before. And then now with a lot of the different automation that you guys are integrating, then they're saving more time and probably allows them, I would imagine, to be able to develop deeper relationships with their customers. What are some of those other, I would imagine that that's a light bulb moment for them once they really get into the system. Are there any other sort of light bulb moments for them, making this transition tech wise?
I think a big part of it is the fact that they don't have to take care of billing and paying, right? The back office support, that's a huge thing because it allows people to focus on managing freight, not managing if a check didn't go to the right address or things like that. At the same time, I think there's a high benefit on participating in an organization that is oriented to high efficiency. And it's not that we're gonna think about it. We're gonna work with the agency in order to understand the problem and try to find a solution, not saying, oh, you're wrong, you should do it this way. Okay, what are you trying to say, right? Like how we can. And I think a light bulb moment is when, yeah, it's like, so I just need to book freight and talk with my customers. Well, yeah, that's it. And it's and they gain a lot of the fact of because of being part of an organization that is focused on high efficiency. They start seeing the benefits of that as well. Of, okay, I can learn from these business processes. I can learn from other agents as well. I can learn from this network. How can I do my part better? But knowing that carriers are going to get paid, your money is going to be collected, you're going to get your commissions, you're not going to have any. If you have an issue, then you're going to call client care and they're going to help you right away. If there is a claim, we're going to take care of that, work with the agent to solve that claim. So I think that liable moment is where, oh, now I can be hyper focused on my business.
And I think too, you're highlighting a good point that for a lot of these folks, I would imagine that you don't know what you don't know, and then you finally get into a new system of processes, a new way of thinking, and maybe at first it's kind of a little worrying because you're so used to having your hands in everything, and now you don't have to worry about that anymore. So maybe at first it's kind of jarring, a little bit, surprising. I know I've experienced this in my own business where I've implemented different automation strategies, and it feels weird to not have to micromanage each of those little things. So I imagine a lot of that is going on with them too, and once they make or complete that onboarding process.
Yes, totally. And I think the key to calm that is communication and observability. Like if you can have KPIs and reporting on how many loads you were able to move before, how many loads are you being able to move now, how much time you were spending on these processes, and that now you're spending zero. I think, and that takes time, and that some people will, and it depends on the personality also. Some people will still want to have their hard copy on paper, and that's okay. Like they want to have their spreadsheets with their what their commission should be, and I think we encourage that. It's like it adds to the transparency. And if there's an error or an issue with data inconsistency, then, well, thanks for letting us know. We'll work on that. But yeah, the key to that, I think, is observability, reporting, like KPIs, and being able to see that and measure it.
So with when everybody, I guess when COVID happened, if a few years ago, and everybody's working from home, there was a big sort of outcry, I think, in a lot of like the corporate tech world that this is going to open everybody up to, malicious attacks and cybersecurity issues and things like that. But with an agent model, you guys are kind of all used to having these remote offices all over the place. How are you, I guess, monitoring or mitigating, potential cybersecurity risk in sort of this environment that most companies find themselves in with remote offices all over the place?
Yeah, so that there, it would depend on the what's called the vector, right? Or where the attack is coming from, or there are many ways. So, for example, email phishing, like it's really hard to combat because if it only takes one person to click a link, enter their password, and then right. So that we do what everyone does, which is protecting our email server as much as we can, and we use cloud for that. We don't use on premise for emails, and we don't use on premise for almost anything. We do have some internal storage, but we are leveraging cloud infrastructure in order to combat that, but used in a way that, for example, all of our we use multi-account setup. So every integration that we do, it's its own little world. So if you are attacking that integration, basically we can take it down and spawn it. We can spawn like another one, like with different URLs and everything in minutes, or like because we've been putting a lot of effort on automating our deployment, automating our infrastructure. We use infrastructure as code. I'm going more in the internal parts, but
no, I think that's cool. Whenever cybersecurity issues happen, and what you have to do to mitigate those risks in a modern day environment.
Yeah, and we have daily snapshots of our databases and daily snapshots of we log all the queries and the data warehouse and all of that, and I think I think cloud infrastructure used in the right way helps a lot in and it opens up other possibilities for attacks. But I think yes, we try to not keep all of our data as it was before. People will have this one database that if you lose that database, you're done. So we have our structure is more distributed. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you watched The Office, but there's like that one scene in even if you don't watch The Office, but there's that one scene that kind of everybody will use as a meme where it's like, oh my God, it's happening, and everybody starts running around the office like crazy. I tend to think that that's what happens when like a cybersecurity attack happens. Is that accurate, or probably not at all? You guys are probably like, have so many different protocols that you don't even have to worry about that. But that's what I imagine happening, anyways.
Yeah, knock on wood, we didn't have a serious incident in our systems. Like, at least since I'm here, we had like phishing attacks to emails, people trying to get to other users' emails and these kind of things. But on the TMS side and on the integration side, we take it very seriously and we try to be as preventive as possible. And so far it's been good. And so yeah, it didn't happen yet. So there was no panic so far. But I imagine that would be what happens. But the one of the vectors that we are more exposed as is we are integrating multiple systems, right? But so what happens if one of those systems go down? But the fact that we have our integration layer means that you could replace that with a spreadsheet in the meantime, while you are you can mitigate that, and your entire operation will continue working. You will probably slow down because you have one component that is not feeding the overall process at the rate it should, but you can still operate, right? Like even for us, for example, if we don't have access to our TMS, but someone wants to get a report on how many loads we did yesterday, you can just go in and get it because that data comes from a data warehouse, a different system, different storage, different permissions, different credentials, different everything. So you cannot attack the entire thing, right? Like, I think that's the main point.
So there's different layers of security that sit on top of it.
Yeah.
Now, we've mentioned the phrase a few times, during this discussion with automation, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about, AI and ChatGPT. Can't, really like take a step outside without somebody mentioning it. I feel like it definitely in my world, you can't not hear about it multiple times every single day. I'm curious as to, what your early thoughts on using systems like this on top of the data that you already have, which I think is kind of where ChatGPT like technology is heading.
Yes, I think we use ChatGPT, and we use also other AI tools for coding.
Oh, cool.
We use GitHub Copilot, and I think these tools are awesome as long as you know to how to direct them, right? So generally, I found that for junior developers, it helps, but it's not gonna take them to the next level, right? But in the hands of someone who is more on the software architecture side, where in the data modeling, as we were talking before, or exploring a problem space and its solution space and all of that, I think it's interesting because it can provide you a lot of nice insight, and it can speed up a lot of the boilerplate code, and sometimes, but it's not gonna help you define your processes better because the business users are the ones who really know how the process should be and should drive that. And I think, going back to what you're saying about data, right? Like, I think there is an um, underestimated power of the processes over the data, because people are focused on the output, which is the data itself, right? I say, oh, I'm seeing this spreadsheet or report or BI tool, but that is just a output from a process, right? And what is your process? So how that data gets cleaned up, how it gets collected, how it gets, is it compliant? The way how you're collecting it is compliant, or you're getting in legal trouble because of how you're collecting it. Like, there are so much more to that than seeing the number, and also with business process. So I think, yeah, to answer the question, ChatGPT, we use it a lot, mostly on that side, but we give it a lot of direction onto what we're building, and yeah, I think it works better the more you know about what you're doing.
That's interesting. You're the first. I've asked. I think in like the last 4 interviews I've had, I've asked, how folks are using ChatGPT like technology, and almost all of them have said that they are. I think about 3 out of 5 had said that they are, and then 2 of them are kind of just a little scared by it. But I agree with you. I think the outputs are there, and you can see those kind of early light bulb moments happening, but it still takes somebody that is highly experienced that can see the nuance in it, especially like on the marketing side of things, or even on the podcasting side of things. I'm using ChatGPT a lot for that, but I know what to look for and what not to look for, if that makes sense. Like some of the stuff that I'm getting, like so for example, I'm using it in, transcription. So I'll take a podcast transcript and upload it to ChatGPT and tell it to find me the most, 5, impactful moments from this conversation. But sometimes it will pull things that we did not even talk about. And so you still have to have that nuance, that experience level to fact check it, to make sure, because it will confidently tell you an answer and it might not be the right answer.
And also, these tools are so biased that we can actually get them to say what we want them to say, and it becomes this feedback loop where you can basically make ChatGPT say that 2 + 2 is 5, and I think you said a key word there, that is nuance. Like, humans are very highly adapted to understand the nuances of everything. We are always, our curious minds are trying to, find all those patterns that don't match, and those details. And I think AI tools are not as good at that level. So they're very good at, okay, write a piece of code that does this thing, but then you need to go in and find those nuances and make it. If you just use it as is, you're probably gonna, um, suffer that pain in the future when you need to go back in that and do it again because it was wrong.
So do you see, I guess, an environment where like a chat GPT powered like chat box is sitting on top of like a TMS, and maybe for some of your customers or some of the freight agents, they can use chat GPT to ask what's the most efficient carrier to handle this lane for me? Does something like that exist? Or it kind of sounds like maybe like a parade would be doing that instead of like a chat GPT.
Yeah, I think because ChatGPT is trained for natural language processing, right? And in many cases, to do digital matching of freight, you are looking at other types of data. It's not natural language processing. So chatbots could help mostly on the support side, maybe, and because they will give you, they will make it really a really nice answer about this should be your carrier because of this and this and this. But if they don't have access to a machine learning model that uses the right signals to determine that, how can you know that it's actually that that carrier is the best? So I think ChatGPT is mostly oriented to natural language processing. Other machine learning and AI tools, I think, will be a best fit for more like digital matching, rates.
Well, like specialized freight activities where ChatGPT is just not there yet.
And we should not underestimate the complexity of the problems we're dealing with. Like having a dynamic pricing is not a trivial problem. Like matching a carrier with a load is not a trivial problem. And there's a lot of this also. Like, of course, on a sales call, there's gonna be this is easy. It's gonna be easy. We're gonna give you this number that is a magic number that if you put that number in your bid, you're gonna win that bid. I think it doesn't work like that. It's more complex than that. It might work for a subset of people or subset of cases, but there are so many.
I think everybody wants a blanket approach to this, forgetting that there's other people on the other side of the transaction that have their own needs and specifications and their own nuance that they want to prioritize.
And something, if I may add something to that, is I think there is something kind of important to mention about the model itself of software companies and startups, and versus having people in your brokerage or in your freight company or freight brokerage company who understands technology and is able to at least build something, even if you're not going to build a TMS, because SPI is it's been in the industry for a while, right? And anything that we build is going to stay with the company for a while. We're not trying to build something quick, so we go out to market and then we get some customers, and because that's not our business. Our business is the freight broker, not selling software. With technology companies, sometimes they just run after a set of features because they got a few contacts at some business experts that they tell them, okay, this is what you should build. It's very biased to that subset of people, and then they try to build it as quickly as possible, and in that process sometimes quality and possibility of customization and all the nuances can get lost. So I think there is something kind of like broken in that model itself. And I think that's why we took this path of, okay, we need vendors, we need all this technology, because we cannot build this dynamic pricing tool ourselves in a time that would make sense. So we're going to use them, but okay, we're going to also own the integration so we can use them in the way that we need, making sure it works for us. And also, what happens if that new company that is all new and shiny doesn't do well. It could happen, and SPI is going to still be here, but we have seen companies, tech companies, come up and down, get, or maybe they start focusing on brokers, but then suddenly they have a big trucking company customer. They start adding features that are only for asset base, and then we are like, oh, we are customers too. We want these new features too, but you need to wait because now we have another customer that is, and that's part of their model, because of course they have to do that because they need to be profitable, and we need to be profitable too. So I find a tension there, and I think a lot of what we built, it's kind of answering to that tension as well.
And I think that you said it very well, where it's almost it brings the whole conversation, kind of circling back in full circle, where you're really analyzing your processes from not only a personnel level, but also from a business level. And you can't be distracted at the business level from the shiny new tech object that takes you away from your overall mission. And that is, providing technology solutions that can, help your freight agents now and in the future. So with all that said, where does I guess sort of the tech outlook look like for, maybe in the months to come, maybe, in the coming year? What should, maybe some freight agents that are on the fence, about joining the company, or maybe some current freight agents that are listening to this, what should they expect, coming down the pipeline from SPI?
Well, what we are working on is all continue improving the integration layer, so we can continue making it easier to integrate whatever new software and tool that may come up, make it easy to integrate. Then there's some automation on the back office also as well, because we notice the company is growing, so we need to make sure that we don't have a bottleneck in our back office. So there are some automation initiatives, but for the agent facing, we're integrating digital freight matching. Next to that is going to come the digital booking as well, what they call the Book It Now. So we have LTL integration with LTL specific tooling, and all that is seamless and connected with the TMS. So those we are launching a scoring program for carriers. So our director of carrier procurement, Mark, came up with this amazing logic to score carriers, and to offer more tools to agents to book their freight, to get access to improve their carrier relationships, to reduce the possibility of claims and fraud. We'll be working also on the dynamic pricing side, but we want to do that all we want to do it in a solid way, because we had
rush it.
Because I find that there are certain tools that are not mature enough yet. That's my perception, at least. It's like they're very new, but like you should charge $2,000 for this. And when I ask how did you get to that, I never got a clear answer on how did you get to that, and they don't want to tell you. So it's from trust. So we will use these tools, but okay, how? Because once you start automating, it's okay. Let's automate bidding, right? Okay, now are you bidding at the right price? Are you bidding on loads that are actually good for you? So all of that is what we are.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's not just about, integrating the tool and then never looking at it again. It's the constant monitoring of it, of what is the value that this tool is bringing to our platform.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's okay. This tool is telling me that carrier A is really good for is very close to your load. Does that mean that it's good for your load? It's telling me that it's close by. Now, what we did is, okay, we get that information from a vendor that, in this case, Parade, gives us the carrier matches by location, but maybe we find that in our rating, that's an F carrier. So maybe, you don't want to book with that carrier because it already had many claims with SPI. So isn't that those are the things that we are working on right now, in all these integrations that we are building, adding all of this. And also our agents don't need to log in into a separate system to get all this.
Oh, that's good.
Because we onboarded this new tool. Okay, here's your login. Okay, then now you have to go to another
Then you have
login,
72 tabs open
and you copy that data,
computer.
and then you need to copy it back somewhere else. So we don't like that. So all the integration we build, we try to bring into the TMS, but keeping the option that if we need to do it other way, we also have that option.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like an agile and flexible solution, especially for a lot of these agents that are out here that they don't know what they don't know. And so being able to still have some of the tools that they're comfortable with, but also being exposed to learning about these new systems and processes and ways of thinking that I think just goes back to sort of the root of all, tech purchases that you should be thinking about before you make that purchase is what do your processes look like and what do you wish that you didn't have to do so you can do more of what you want to do. And you should never make a tech purchase if you don't know what those processes are in the first place.
Totally. And you should know what you need. And if there's no need, then there's nothing to really offer, right? Like to be offered. So something that I appreciate from SPI is that we have a lot of good communication with agents, and agents can call me. They don't have to go to over 20 people to get to the IT department to look at their requirements. And of course, we have a list of priorities. We have our roadmap and everything, but everyone can just, hey, Ese, what can we make this happen? This customer has a very specific need. They need a file with this specific format, and they want it. And this is my, this is if I land this account, it's gonna be great for my business. And then, so we work closely with the agent to make it happen. And if it's very, very, very custom, we don't say, well, I don't know, it's too custom. It's like we knew it was going to be custom. We are ready for it.
I love that. I think that that's a perfect place to sort of land on for a lot of prospective agents, and current agents, just thinking about maybe making the switch or maybe they're on the fence right now that it doesn't have to be a painful process. I think for most of us that have worked in freight long enough, you've experienced the pain that is a terrible tech stack onboarding. I once worked for a company that we had a TMS and we integrated. We spent 2 years adding it to our system, and it still didn't have an accounting functionality to it. So it was kind of a hot mess, and the company ended up going out of business anyway. So I mean, that was probably the wrong tech investment can be detrimental. And so at least from that angle, from a freight agent perspective, it sounds like everything that SPI is doing is thoughtful and then also customizable.
Yes, totally. That's
All
a
right,
great description.
Oh, thank you. Well, where can folks, if they're interested, if they are one of those folks that are kind of on the fence, thinking about becoming a freight agent, where can folks, find out more information? I imagine it, right there on the website, SPIlogistics.com. Any other resources that you think that would be helpful for a potential freight agent to know?
Yeah, our website is SPI3PL, like the number 3PL.com. Then I would encourage them to talk with, they can email me personally, eperalta@spi3pl.com. Feel free to chat and say, hey, I'm interested, and
Nice.
we want to have a demo of the system. Yeah, for sure. Let's set it up. If they want to reach out to Mike, Mike Mikulik, he will be also happy to. So I guess just reach out to us, and our executive team is here to to talk with you. We're not gonna be hiding or yeah, we'll I encourage them to email us directly, to me or Mike or any on the team. I can share the emails of everyone
For sure. And I think I'll make it easy for folks. I'll put your email address in the show notes. So hopefully you won't get, hit with any kind of, too much spam or anything like that. But just to make it easy for folks out there, I'll put your email in the show notes, as well as the SPI3PL.com website, which should be already in all of our show notes. So any episode that you listen to on Everything is Logistics, you'll see them. They are a proud sponsor, or I am I guess a proud podcaster that has the support of SPI. So these shows are definitely brought to you by SPI, but all of the conversation that you heard in this is as honest and authentic as they come. We're kind of, no BS around here. So SA, I appreciate your insight and kind of entertaining a lot of the different, questions that I threw your way. This was really insightful conversation, and appreciate your time.
And last but certainly not least, let's talk with Anita Bassi. She's the Vice President of People and Operations over at SPI Logistics, to talk about the day-to-day challenges that freight agents face and the unique way that SPI supports its agents through technology assistance, proactive fraud prevention, all of this to reduce turnover and cultivate enduring partnerships.
Speaking of SPI Logistics, we have one of the best people working at SPI with Anita Bassi. She is the VP of People and Operations over at SPI. So we're going to be talking all about what makes for a successful freight agent program in 2024 and beyond. So Anita, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, kind of.
Now, we were just talking before the show. You mentioned that you hate doing podcasts. They're a little nerve-wracking. I totally get that. So let's just start off with sort of your job role and title. You recently upgraded, so it was formerly client experience, but now it's VP of Operations too. So tell us a little bit about what that day-to-day role looks like for you.
Yeah, in terms of operations, it's exactly what you think. I'm handling the day-to-day operations of the organization. So my team handles any issues that come in. So if there's a carrier issue, a stolen load, an accident, or just an agent issue where, they're having problems with their computers, the TMS, software, we're the ones who are kind of coming in and troubleshooting, helping them. But we're also taking the lead when it comes to hostage loads, a carrier not being happy, any complaints coming in. So, although I focus primarily on the agent side of things, we handle quite a bit of the operations, and that includes like carrier satisfaction and those relationships. So it just seemed like a natural progression to change my title and role and really take on operations altogether. So
yeah, I think anyone who's met you in person knows that you are just, I joke to Mike Mikulik, who also works for SPI. He's been a former guest on the show for anybody who's listening that may want to check out those episodes as well. But I joked around to Mike that I was like, Anita scares the shit out of me because she's so badass. And I was like, I have to make sure that I'm on my P's and Q's when I'm around her. So this is, if you're a little nervous, and I'm a little nervous too, because I was like, I got to make sure this interview is right.
I feel like I'm harmless, but I get that sometimes. I'm just like, I'm like a big teddy bear because I look kind of like scary. I have that resting face, but I'm actually quite friendly and nice. I'm very kind.
Yes, you definitely are, but you're also a woman in this industry that you want to impress. So I say that as like a full on like, I want to make Anita proud, because I feel like if I make Anita proud, then everybody else will be okay too. And so let's make sure that we come with it. And now, what I thought was really interesting, because I also told you before we started recording that I was listening to your conversation, Trey Griggs of Standing Out Show, which was a great interview and a conversation that you guys had as well. But what I thought was really fascinating is that before you ever joined SPI, you grew up in the trucking industry. Your dad owned a trucking company. Is that correct?
Yes, he did. So he started off as a truck driver. Since I can remember, like probably as a toddler. So he was driving a truck like in town, and then he kind of moved to highway, then he moved back into town. Eventually the company he's working with, who by the way is like a fabulous trucking organization here, ended up having to close shop, because I think it was during one of the recessions. And so at that time he took the leap and opened up his own trucking company. But so then I was kind of immersed into the industry at that time, right? Like dispatching, understanding how the ports work, seeing how claims affected people, not just the administration of a claim, but how, like, the impact it has on real people, like the drivers, the trucking company, the customer relationship. Yeah, just all of it. I found it really dynamic. I just didn't think I would follow suit.
Yeah, that I would imagine that seeing it from that lens, because I think you mentioned during the podcast that there were you watched him late at night having to answer phone calls and answer concerns of other
Yeah.
drivers, and just seeing kind of like the
Yeah.
impact of like the work-life balance that he had.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came time to join the industry again, were you hesitant at all to join, or was it just a good sort of it felt right?
So when Joe reached out and, we had the interview, I really, really liked Joe off the bat. I liked what his vision was for the organization. And I actually went to my dad to talk about like the industry and the company, and he recalled SPI because he had actually been a carrier for SPI.
Oh, nice.
So he started saying, look, is this person still there? And I was like, no, Dad, that was like 20 years ago. But, he had nothing but great things to say about SPI. So from that point of view, I wasn't hesitant. Also, when I originally started with SPI, I started more of an HR based role. So I did not have as much exposure to, I guess, like the opportunities or the problems that might arise in this industry. It was more to do with like the people actually in the office or agency offices, building up the culture. And the only really insight I had into like transportation in that particular role was claims management. So it was kind of like a soft introduction. And so I didn't find it stressful or, hesitant to come in. I was enjoying it. It was dynamic. And also 6 years ago, the industry was quite different from what it is now. You weren't having all these insurance companies where you have problems with claims and things like that. So it was quite different. And I was not hesitant. I think it's just completely changed like the landscape of what we do in transportation or as a freight broker now.
And for folks who may not be aware, who is Joe and his relationship to the company?
Sure. So Joe Chandler is our president and our chief operating officer. And so that's who I report into. And he had been with the organization about 2 years when I joined, and he actually ended up bringing Mike, who's our VP of sales and marketing, and myself on. So that was the time that he kind of decided that, we needed to have more of an HR presence. And so that was my background. I came in on the HR side, but I had always been embedded within like an operations team. And so I had two roles I've always played. I've always kind of understood, how does HR really impact the strategic vision of an organization and the bottom line. And so it was kind of a natural fit. And then as I kept working with the team here at SPI, I love the industry. I just found it so dynamic. Every day is different. It's very challenging, but also when you resolve a problem, it's so rewarding because there's so many players in the game, right? And so then I just kind of naturally progressed towards operations and that side of things. But
so for HR, you had mentioned this earlier that you still are heavily involved in HR, right now for SPI, and you just mentioned that it really impacts the bottom line. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit? How does because I think for most folks they kind of know HR is like the department that you go and you report a problem to. But you mentioned how much it impacts the bottom line. I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think any organization that wants to be successful really has to see the value in HR, because we're not just those individuals you come to get like a write-up from, or can we terminate this employee, or, I want to have an event. So like, or like, I don't know what to do, so give it to HR. But I think the important thing about it is that we are the ones selecting the individuals. We are the gatekeepers to who represents the organization. So having great HR leads to a successful bottom line, because we bring on the talent that represents the company, who is aligned with your culture, your values, your mission. You train them, right? You get them on board and you put them into this perfect little package to hand off to operations. But in our situation as an organization, it's so nice that HR and ops are under one roof, because now we have the people we bring on in client care, right? But they're also training our agents. So we're kind of doing it as an HR department. That really is an HR function, training. And so when an agent onboards or a sub rep for an agency office onboards, we take them through the full training, we onboard them, and we help them with continuing training too, when so things change. But also we understand the operations of the organization, so we can act quickly when they have questions. We're not saying, hey, just hold on, let me talk to your operations manager or the ops coordinator. we can just answer those questions for them during training. We understand the industry ourselves, and we also understand how to be able to dispatch a qualified load or how to find what the proper rate would be. So aligning those two departments allows you to be profitable, I think.
No, that's a great breakdown, and it makes a ton of sense, because you're not only balancing the employees that you have in the office, but you're balancing the freight agents that are coming into play. Because I think, what makes SPI super unique compared to other freight agent programs is that you only have freight agents. You don't have an in-house brokerage team that almost, I don't want to say can kind of steal freight away from the agents, but it's borrow might be the best phrase. Share might be, a better phrase. Why the focus on, and maybe this, I'm not sure if you can answer this question for me, but I'm going to ask it anyways. But for the freight agents in particular, why the focus there when, you could add an additional line of revenue with an in-house brokerage, but does that sort of muddy the waters too much?
I think it muddies the water, but I think as an organization, we've made a decision as to what our product is, and our product is service. And we are here to provide a great service. We are back office support. That is what we specialize in. And that's where we spend our resources and our people's training so we can provide this great service at the end of the day, right? If we were to bring in-house brokers, you're then deviating from kind of a service, because now we're also having to bring on our customers. We're providing a product kind of, you know what I mean? So you're muddying the waters. You're also creating competition with your agency-based model. And I think it also becomes, who do you service? Do you service your in-house customers, or do you service the agent's customers? And this keeps it so clean for us. And it's just something we enjoy doing. It's great having partners who know what they're doing. We don't have to become experts in every type of freight, because our agents are experts in their customers' freight. But what we are experts in is understanding, how do we onboard? How do the systems work together? How do we integrate new tools for you? So you can just focus on dispatching the freight, getting the customers. If there's a claim, we're experts in, filing that claim, resolving it for you, finding a way out of it. And even when it comes to like accidents, things like that, that's what I think we pride ourselves on. And it just gives us a competitive advantage, I guess, in comparison to other brokers.
Yeah, for sure. And let's get into a little bit of what that onboarding experience looks like. You mentioned, the value of HR being able to sort of, train and onboard people and make sure that they're a cultural fit. Is that sort of the same approach to agents as well, making sure they're a cultural fit as well?
Yeah, and I think one thing we do strong here is that we work very closely with sales. So Mike and I have a great relationship. We're on the same page when it comes to identifying agents who are going to be onboarding. Him and his team do a great job of qualifying the agents, because it's just like employees. You're interviewing them, they're interviewing you too. And I think it's the same way for agents. Yes, they're interviewing us, but we're interviewing them as well. Do you fit our professional code of conduct? Do you have the ethics, the morals that we want? Does it make sense? Are you a fit for the culture that we've created and we try very hard to protect at SPI, right? So those are all things vetted through those conversations and making sure that works out. But then before we even onboard, Mike's really great with us having calls with the prospective agent, demoing our system, making sure that there's a great fit, because what we don't want, and you don't want this in HR either, is turnover. We don't want the attrition to be high. So when we onboard agents, they don't leave, because I think we've given them a very real picture of what they're going to get at SPI, who the players are, who they'd be working with, what the system looks like, what we can truly offer. We try not to promise something that we can't back up. And that's the same thing on the employee side too.
Now, we've had Eze, who's in charge of IT over at SPI, and he was talking about sort of the technical aspect of onboarding a new agent and being able to connect to all of their different systems. What about on the operations side of things? What does that onboarding experience look like? Does I guess take me from, the agent signing on the bottom line to getting fully up and running with SPI?
Yeah. So once they've demoed our TMS and we've decided it's a fit, basically the onboarding process starts from setting up an agency agreement, which by the way, we have no non-compete. So that's always a win, right? So we set up the agency agreement. We schedule a day within it's usually typically 24 to 48 hours, depending on the agent's availability. And if if they're actively working and it's hard to onboard during work hours, then we'll make our team, reach out and they'll coordinate it, maybe an after hours session. So we're really flexible that way. But basically within 24 to 48 hours, they'll be doing an actual training session. So we have 2 training sessions that they'll go through, not just with our TMS, but all of our load boards, our company intranet, any kind of tools and technology that we have is kind of what we spend the majority of the 2 days training on. And then we provide them support with getting their customers onboarding, making sure we get the credit agreement signed. So we introduce them to AR. We also introduced them to AP at that time. So explaining, what are the payment terms that their carriers can be looking for, because we also want to make sure that they understand our procedures so they can relay the correct information to their carriers and to their customers. And if they have carriers that they want to onboard, we typically try to get that onboarded before. So put them through our carrier vetting process to make sure there's not going to be any issues. And just working with getting them all set up for their go live date of, dispatching their first load within our system.
How long does that process typically take? It sounds like it's relatively short.
It's pretty quick. I would say 1 to 3 days. Oh, nice. They're up and running. Yeah.
Wow.
We actually.
I thought you were going to say like 1 to 3 months. That's what I would have assumed. Just learning any kind of new technology. But I guess if they can take all of their current technology with them wherever they go and make upgrades where needed, then the onboarding process can be a lot quicker than that.
Yeah, and like with our company intranet, we also have a lot of resources. So we have training videos for all of like our TMS. So, even though we'll take them through training, we provide them additional resources. So if they don't want to talk to us on the phone, they don't want to call us, and they want just a couple quick questions after training, like how they're booking their load or a freight plan, we have all the video resources for that too. So they can go step by step, they're narrated by us so they can completely understand how to get things done. So it's quite efficient that way, but we have a great like carrier and client care setup team who's available all the time. We have after hours support. So we run 24/7 basically.
There was one point in the conversation with Trey that you were talking about a new agent that you wanted to help, or maybe he was an existing agent and he was onboarding a new customer, I believe, but he didn't know how to use Teams. And you guys actually set up a training session and got Teams set up for him so he could land that new customer. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is. So we do that with like Zoom or when they have these like online meetings, like because we do have agents who are not as comfortable with tech. So a lot of the times we will jump on and we'll do like ConnectWise and we'll show them how to get it done and set up, or, they might get locked out of their email or they might get hacked. And so it's us also going in and like having our IT team go in and support them and doing a check and doing whatever we can to get them up and running quickly as possible. Just going that extra mile, because I think people appreciate when you actually genuinely care about them. And I think we do. So
yeah, because you were listing all of the things that SPI provides, and it was claims, HR, day-to-day ops, insurance, carrier setup and vetting, AP, payroll, training, fraud training, or fraud help. That's a lot of stuff that it's essentially the entire back office, right?
We're 100% back office support. And again, that comes back to, we have decided this is our service and we are going to be great at it. So, everything that they need, it's a one-stop shop and we're there for them.
Yeah, because I think you had mentioned too that you're almost in the client services business where your agents are your clients. And as long as you're giving them everything they need, then hopefully they don't have any reason to leave.
Yes, exactly. And I think, that's where that model is different again, because it's like they're partners, but they're also clients, right? So, we might go with them to pitch their customer on a new lane or a new product or a new sale, right? But at the same time, they are also our customers. So it's making sure that we provide the same service to them that we encourage them to provide to their customers. So it's kind of just a round effect there.
So what, I imagine during the onboarding process, there's going to be some concerns, there's going to be some questions, there's maybe some objections or obstacles that you have to overcome. What are some examples of maybe some of the more common ones that SPI helps them to resolve to speed up the onboarding process?
Yeah, so typically this is ironed out before they actually onboard. It's usually during like the prospecting phase. And so if there's any questions, we usually put them in touch with the right department to answer those questions. But for example, I would say the most 2 common ones that we deal with are claims questions, what our role is going to be in claims, because a lot of agents who come to us have had a lot of issues with their claims department. So not enough support, not helping them file the claim, not giving them direction. So those are usually the biggest hesitations, or they've been burned. They've had claims that aren't able to get settled, but their agency doesn't go the extra mile to get legal involved or to pursue the claim. They just accept it maybe at the denial phase and not appealing. Or they've had to pay out of pocket for ones that they weren't negligent in. There's no fault of their own. There's no shared cost. So those are the questions that typically come up with claims. And so, where we explain our process and how it works, and we fully take ownership of the claims in terms of the administration. So that's kind of one of the areas that could be a hesitation. They're looking for a new agency who can better support them in that side of things. And then the other question lately that's coming up is carrier vetting. And I would say that's because of the fraud. And it kind of goes hand in hand with the claims and the stolen loads and the double brokered loads. And so, a lot of the new agents are now asking, hey, what are your carrier vetting processes? What system are you using? What are you doing internally? And so that's kind of something we've been working with. And, I think we have a great carrier vetting process. We have a great carrier vetting tool with Highway. So I think we can alleviate a lot of those concerns with just a quick conversation.
Yeah, it almost sounds like they're looking for a partner as well in order to help them get through some of these more difficult problems so they can focus more on their customer relationships and selling more freight, while the back office things and things that could really impact their business. I mean, one claim could maybe put, some companies out of business.
Yeah, or you could lose the customer. And some agents only have like one particular customer. So when they're coming to you and they're saying, hey, like, I had 3 claims back to back. We had poor carrier vetting processes. We're on our last strike here now with this customer. What do we do? What are your processes? So those things are really important to agents as we go into this like uncharted territory right now. And that's what we're seeing.
And so what other, you mentioned Highway, what are some other ways that you're helping with carrier vetting and fraud prevention?
Yeah, we have our own internal systems too. So, we review Carrier 401, we have Carrier Sure, we're using Highway. And then we have other things within the internal TMS that we've created to just have an internal carrier scorecard. So making sure we're checking also FMCSA changes to contact information. So there's a lot of good resources out there. And a lot of them aren't that expensive, like Carrier Sure or having access to 401, but just doing your due diligence. And as an industry, I think we have to encourage everybody to get on these platforms. And I think that's the only way you're going to be able to weed out, these scammers and these fraudsters and the double brokering. But if we can encourage everybody to do even one system, I think we can help a lot. And then, when you're going to these conferences, it's great. So Mark Funk, our director of carrier procurement, he went to a carrier conference and he actually ended up creating broker chain. So, we can talk to each other and figure out best practices, but just communicating with each other is important.
And it almost sounds like some of these issues are catalysts for why a freight agent would leave somewhere else and then come and join SPI. Is that a safe assumption that carrier vetting is one of those top reasons?
Yes, carrier vetting, which leads to, sizable claims. So, of course, that's a big, big one.
What are some other ones? Do you know any offhand?
I think those are the 2 challenges that we've seen. And prior to carrier vetting, it was mostly claims questions that we had or lack of support. So not having a department like the client care or the carrier setup team that was responsive, delayed times, taking an hour or 2 hours to respond to an email. So responsiveness is a huge thing, obviously, in this industry. And so agents coming without that lack of support are going to be looking for a new home.
Now, we had talked briefly about, having maybe an in-house brokerage is almost a little bit of competition to a freight agent program. But what about the freight agents themselves? Because I get the impression, and I've talked to a few of the different agents with SPI, that a lot of these freight agents are friends. Like they're not seeing each other as competition. Is that by design within the HR part of the program with SPI?
Within SPI? Yeah. Yes, within SPI, they're friends. I was going to say, I thought you meant external. Yeah, definitely within SPI. It's actually, I love it. I think that we've just created this culture of like a family. And so, when we have our annual conference, they're sharing ideas. They call other agents to get help or to recover loads or sharing customer accounts that, maybe are too big for them to take on by themselves. Covering for vacation time. They have great friendships. So it's become like a network, but it's also having respect for everybody's, boundaries when it comes to like, this is their client. But again, yes, they are very resourceful and sharing and helpful. And it can be tough in this industry when you maybe only have enough business to have yourself and not have employees. So creating networking relationships within the company to allow yourself to take a vacation is
That's I didn't even think about that aspect, because for a lot of freight agents, it's a one person operation. And so then they have the help, of course, of SPI. But if you want to take that vacation, you probably can't with other programs. But with SPI, you can actually trust that the other freight agents within the system are going to be able to help you out as well, to enjoy a little downtime.
Yeah. And like, we don't try to interfere too much in that part of it, but when they have those conferences, that is the opportunity to network and create those relationships. And especially since we have very little attrition, they see these people over and over, and you begin to trust them and you create those relationships. And it is important, because I think about my dad, who never really took a vacation because he was running the company on his own, and it can be tiring, and it can be, it's like a burnout factor there too. So having people that you can rely on and count as friends is really important. And we see those relationships for sure in SPI. It's neat.
And there was a previous guest on the pod, in case anybody wants to listen to it, is Tynan, and he actually is a freight agent for SPI, but he is working underneath another freight agent that's also part of SPI. So this was a pathway for him to enter the industry and then start to build his book of business. Is that a common program that is offered, or is it more like a case by case basis for SPI?
Yeah, that's a case by case. Like, we're very open to helping, like, I'll do interviews for agency offices when they want us to jump on, or like they're hiring like a higher level position when it comes to sales. Our team is totally willing to help and do interviews and give our opinions and our feedback, because again, they might not be experts in HR, but we can do that for them. And then we're also keen to help and train. So, if there's situations that come up like Tynan's, yes, we're completely hands-on to help and train them and then try to find a solution. But that's definitely a case by case. It's not like a regular service we offer.
Yeah, because especially with the sponsorship and the relationship that we have with SPI, like, we know that you need a book of business, you need to be established in order to be a good fit for SPI. But there are case by cases where you can maybe impress Anita with your skills and then get onboarded with SPI.
Sneak them in there.
Because as you were talking and you were mentioning that sometimes you join, other calls, I would be having you interview or helping me interview everyone, because I know that you would be able to catch something that I wouldn't be able to catch. So kudos to those freight agents that are putting the Anita power behind their hiring. Now, we had also talked, I went to my first Rendezvous, SPI Rendezvous, annual conference that you guys have. I believe the way you approach it is you have one in Vancouver, then one in a U.S. city, and then back to Vancouver, and then another U.S. city. Is that the right fluctuation?
That is.
And
we're just in heavy planning right now for our 2024. So,
and it's going to be in Nashville for this year. It's usually around like April, May timeline. What all goes into planning an event like this?
Like a small wedding. So I get hot sweats thinking about it now. It's like a small wedding, to be honest. There's just so much care and love that goes into this conference. And even though where I started in this company to where I am now, I can't let it go, because there's so much happiness that comes from it, from the agents, and how much they enjoy it. And so I just want to make sure it's really perfect for them. And it's a time for us to appreciate and thank them for their business as well. So, we try to make it educational, that we have speakers come out, we have the executive basically presenting on topics that are important, that are happening, having some breakout sessions. But like, really the heart and soul of it is to network and to have fun. And it's like a couple of days for them to go out and get to meet other people who are in this industry, where they might not get the time to do that, right? They may not have time to go to conferences. So they get to come out and have fun and let loose, but also learn and meet with, members of the leadership team, but also with all of our staff. So it's just a great event overall, but that's kind of the purpose of it.
I didn't even really think about the fact that freight agents are kind of a lot like drivers, where they don't really have that office community. They have to go and they're working remotely for most of the time. And so for this event, it probably is one of the few occasions out of the year that they get to network with other like-minded individuals who are going through the same like trials and tribulations that they are. I would imagine that the education being shared is really top notch at each one of these events.
Yeah, and I think, and that's like, again, this is like the opportunity where we share everything that's going on. So it's great. And this year is amazing. I think we only have like 4 or 5 agents not attending, and the rest are all coming. So it just kind of speaks to the volume of like that family feel that we have, and the fact that everyone is really excited to come. But yeah, they share a lot, they learn a lot, and we have some great speakers this year. We're going to be focusing more on like the carrier vetting side of things, but because again, it's like the issue at mind right now. So
yeah, it's like
it should be good.
The nature of the industry, you know, fraud is just in the incredible explosion in it. I think it was 57% of cargo crime in general, not even, you know, carrier fraud or, you know, impersonation or anything like that, but cargo crime itself was up 57% year over year. I saw that stat that was just released yesterday, which is just insane to think about.
And that's underreported too, right?
Yeah.
Like that's underreported. Think about like, so yeah, we have access to cargo now, we're reporting it, but a lot of organizations don't have access to that because you have to be a member, you have to pay for it. So a lot of them don't report it. A lot of this information is just like that data is just left there. So if we think it's 57, imagine what it really is.
So what else is on, I mean, I know SPI's freight agent program is best in biz, but how do you decide what to add to it? Like, what are some additions that you're going to have in 2024 that might complement the freight agent program, or do you have it kind of on lock?
I feel like we have it on lock. Like we are introducing a couple new tools that I'm not privy to speak to as of yet, that we're going to be announcing at Rendezvous. Oh, nice. So we're always looking for new technologies. We're always looking for new items that are going to make our agents' lives easier or more efficient or automate the process. The only difference for us is even if we automate the process on our end, is we don't let go of our staff. We want these tools to better the life of our staff, to help our agents, who can then in return help their customers. But yeah, I think in terms of what we may focus on, that's maybe a Mike question for sales. I'll leave that to him. I'll put him in the hot seat.
Yes, we got to get him back on the show so he can talk about, you know, some of these things and some new additions to the program. Now, before we kind of wrap up, what advice would you give to somebody who is maybe already a freight agent and is thinking about making the jump?
Yeah, and like, do you mean a freight agent as an employee,
or just in general, just a freight agent? Maybe they're with another company right now and they're thinking about making the jump to SPI. What kind of advice would you give to them to make sure that all their ducks are kind of in a row before they make that leap?
Yeah, I think, well, one, there has to be a catalyst for the reason why they want to leave, right? So I think they really need to identify that and see, are they getting what they're paying for? Because being a part of a brokerage, like any other industry, like real estate, whatever, you're paying to be a part of that brokerage, right? So are you getting the bang for your buck? Are you getting the support? Are you feeling protected? And I think that's a big one coming into 2024, because shippers understand that loads are being stolen. They also want to know, what are you doing to protect my load? Are you educated in that area? Is your brokerage informing you? Are they on top of it? Do they have good processes? Do they have the technology to move forward in 2024? And I think that's a big one, that people who have not invested in technology to this point, especially on the carrier vetting process, are going to be behind. And so as a freight broker, I think you have to real assessment as to what your system is capable of. And what it's not capable of. Because if it's not capable of giving your carriers a scoring, it's not capable of, limiting loads or finding out, is there associations or whatever the insights or risks might be to that carrier, you're going to be in trouble. And you're going to be at high risk of losing that customer. So if you're not prepared and your agency is not prepared, I think that's a big catalyst for change. And at SPI, we are ready and we can help you out. So.
All right.
My little self.
No, that was a great answer, because I was just writing that down, that that's going to be we have a new editing technique for, I guess, some behind the scenes knowledge, but we have a new editing technique for our videos, is where we're taking a good pull quote from the conversation to put at the front of the conversation, kind of reel people in. So that was the one. So that's what I just wrote down. So in case anyone is listening and they want to kind of, I guess, see how this sausage is made, I guess this is a terrible pun. Yeah. But Anita, anything else that you think is important to mention that we haven't already talked about?
No, I don't. I think at the end of the day, I know the industry, I talk to some freight agents and I feel for them that have been in the industry for 15, 20 years, and they've gone their entire career without any problems, any issues. And now they're dealing with double broker loads, or us coming in saying, hey, we got to tighten, this process or that, or they're like, but why, we've never had an issue. And it's just a lot of change, and I just want people to hang in there. And I think that even though it might not feel fun right now because we're combating so much crime, I'll get back there. And it is a fun industry to be part of, and the people who work for it are amazing. So just hang in and enjoy, and it's a great ride.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like any industry. The more digital tools you add, the easier it is for everyone, but it's also the easier it is for the fraudulent players as well. So we got to kind of, keep up with the times in order to protect ourselves and our business and our customers. So Anita, this was awesome. This was great. Where can folks follow you? Sign up for SPI's Freight Agent program, or, book a meeting, any of that cool stuff?
Yeah, I think I'm easily accessible by email. I'm like total millennial. I hate talking on the phone. So like, just email me. But abassi@spi3pl.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Otherwise, you can go to our website, and there is a quick, you're interested, send in your information, and they'll come over to our sales team, and they'll get in touch with us as well. So,
well, this was awesome. Not scary at all. Great conversation and a ton of value. So what more can we ask for?
Thanks so much, Blythe. It was fun.
Absolutely.